Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Richmond Selectboard meeting for May 15th, 2023. At the start, we take This is a welcome. At the start, we take public comment. Does anybody have any public comment about an item not on the agenda? Okay, June.
June Heston. I'm coming as a member of the Police Chief Hiring Committee, and I wrote my comments down, so I won't ramble. We learned today that our final candidate of Richmond, the Richmond Police Chief, withdrew from the hiring process, and he has stated why that is. As a member of the hiring committee, I think it's important to be transparent about the fact that all the candidates were identified as a good fit for Richmond Police Chief withdrew from the process. We don't know all the reasons, but we do know the final candidate felt he was being targeted by a group of people concerned about an accusation of domestic violence, which took place in 2017. That is a legitimate concern, and I think it warranted due diligence in determining the validity of the concern. We discovered this incident was reviewed by 2 attorneys general and was dismissed due to lack of evidence. It was also reviewed by the Chittenden County State's Attorney when this candidate was being considered for hire for another position with South Burlington Police Department, and that resulted in his being hired by South Burlington Police Department. We also held a listening circle facilitated by the Williston Community Justice Center to ensure people felt heard about this concern. Town leaders and hiring committee members were not allowed to attend, and we honored that. Although my understanding of restorative practice is that both the harmer, in this case, maybe the town manager and or the hiring committee, and the harmed, those affected by the decision to move forward, move that person forward, would work on an avenue to repair and reintegration. I do not have the perspective of someone affected by domestic violence, so I felt it would have been valuable to hear those concerns, but the reasoning given was they wanted to ensure people felt safe to speak. That seemed fair. But to then hear the media was invited to attend the meeting seems to me a contradiction to the intent of the meeting. I also do not have the perspective of being someone falsely accused of something. So that perspective was important to hear. Unfortunately, only a few people were able to hear that side of the story since we didn't get to the public forum part of the process. What is most concerning to me is that it is apparent a small group of people in our town made it their mission to ensure this person was not hired. So to those of you who felt you knew better than 2 attorneys general and our Chittenden County State's Attorney, you won. But what have you won? We had a very qualified candidate with many years of experience in police work, including as chief of a small town in Vermont. He was a person of color and would have provided a much needed perspective in this town. He was willing to take on the challenges facing our police department, and he was prepared to move the conversation forward on the possibility of regionalization of our police department. I know our justice system is broken and there is much work to be done. So maybe I'm naive to think that our objective is to be objective and a person is innocent until proven. Isn't that the equity we are searching for? It hurts me to say that as much work as we have tried to do on being a welcoming and engaging community, we have a long way to go before everyone feels a sense of belonging.
Thank you, June. Okay, Josh, you still have one?
Well, my only announcement was going to be what June covered as far as the candidate pulling out of the hiring process.
Okay, anyone else who has a public, Bob?
Well, I have some questions.
This is not the time. This is not questions.
Okay, well, then I could.
Bob, the microphone's up there. You can't.
But also, this is not a time. We're not taking questions at this point. This is,
Well, can I clarify a point that she made?
if you can be brief.
Yeah, no, I can be very brief. I'm Bob Stafford. I also happen to be the chair of the executive board for the Williston Community Justice Center, and I'm not here to represent them tonight, but when she said that a member of the media was invited to that, member of the media was not invited to that. I don't know anybody who invited that person to come. I was really surprised because I sat at that circle. I was really surprised to see that person there. So
Okay,
no one from the Community Justice Center invited him.
thank you for the clarification. Okay,
Further comments?
further comments, Karen?
There you go first.
Okay.
Hi there. Thank you. Mary Holt, and I will be brief. Today, the folks who have the mowing contract were mowing at the 2614 Cochrane Road lot. And if it would be so kind to provide them a key, they won't have to leave their equipment in the road where people were riding bikes and walking and slowing down, and it's a hazard that doesn't need to be there. That the key to that lot, it's not that important, except you need to keep it locked, but they need to pull off the road rather than just it parallel to the road. And kind of in that vein, if you please, I had asked for the inventory for all the grounds equipment that was used for maintenance for previous years. Where is that? Because we were supposed to successfully transfer that to public sale if the mowing contract was continued. It has been continued, and I'd like to know where that is, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mary will follow up on that. Kara?
Thank you, Carol Bounty. 2 weeks ago at the select board meeting, I brought up the reappraisal and said, thank you for having them post things online for us to be able to download the information. I also said I was not given information that had been requested. I was then given a map that was inaccurate, that is no longer correct for neighborhoods. And I am still waiting on land schedules. So we have our appeals next week, those of us who are grieving our taxes, and we do not have the data that they've spent 2 years to prepare. So you have hired them, and I don't know if it was 150,000 you're paying them or 200,000, but we are not getting information that we are entitled to.
Okay. Josh. Lee.
Follow up on that?
I don't know. You come on up, Phil. Introduce yourself.
Brad Worthen, Southview Drive, 26 years here in Richmond. And I got a plot out at Riverview, so I'm not going anywhere. So I I responded to an email that Josh sent out months ago looking for individuals to help hire our next police chief. We went through 15 different resumes, applications, narrowed that down to 6. Interviewed 4 of those, and one person was always on the top, and this was Daniel. What happened was what is happening through society today, which is called cancel culture, where one side gets going on an issue in a domestic dispute that was, again, as June pointed out, investigated by attorney generals. I've been accused of things in the past. I never had the luxury of having someone judge the 2 parties. We lost an extremely good candidate here because of a minority culture, cancel culture, who did not want to listen to the other side of the story. And I don't blame Daniel for saying I'm out, because the scrutiny that he was given personally was abominable. It just, I mean, I've interviewed thousands of people in my past as an employment agency person. And what happened one night in this room or in this building by one of the just retired Richmond police officers was abominable. It was an interrogation that should have never happened. But that individual had an agenda, and that agenda lived through with this other meeting that occurred in Williston. And they were all out to get this person who was accused in a divorce situation of domestic abuse, in which he was given his rights to be investigated by state's attorneys. We lost a good candidate. We got 5 cars parked out there. We have no protection in this town. We need police protection. And if there's any way we can bring Daniel back through the power of this select board, I would urge you to reach out and do that, because he is a highly qualified candidate for a small town as Richmond. We would be honored, and we'd be great to have him here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Denise Barnard. I was brought up and taught that you are innocent until proven guilty. And as a mother of 2 Black children, it would have been wonderful to have that gentleman in our town.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no more for public comment, I would like to thank everybody for their polite but very deeply felt comments. I'm glad that we live in a town where people can share their thoughts. I would like to make one statement before we start that has nothing to do with this, the police issue. It has to do with meeting timing. It's well known that select board meetings can run very long. Sometimes it's because people have a lot to say. Sometimes it's because we put too many things on the agenda. But I want to note two things. It's when we have meetings run very, very long, it serves as disincentive to want to come to the meetings and to want to possibly serve on the select board. We're aware that we need to do more to move meetings along in a timely fashion. And tonight, I'm going to try to do exactly that, but I know we've got a lot on the agenda and I know people need their time, but I would like to, I will periodically just do time checks so that we know kind of where we stand. Because I think we need to start a new habit of working to the clock a little bit. We've also talked about as a select board possibly saving some items for off weeks to have perhaps if we have an executive session item, we might do that on the off Monday. Not that the town would not still be meeting would not still be warned, but comments about time have been heard. The last thing last public comment I'd like to solicit has to do with Mr. Frawley. Mr. Frawley, who is on the Zoom, has a liquor license application that is currently scheduled to be heard at about 10:30 at night. Josh suggested that I call on Mr. Frawley to see if he would like to make a brief comment so he wouldn't have to stay on the call till then.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to state that we are Summit Distributing, Summit Stores. We're the applicant that you've been dealing with for quite some time on the rebuild of the Richmond Mobile location. And our existing tenant, RMM Enterprises, is going to be leaving the location on May 24th, which is why we're stepping in early to take over the operation of the Richmond Mobile Mart and also hopefully take over a liquor license. And we're going to be the ones who operate the store, hopefully post-construction, if we get to that point. So I just want to text who we are.
Okay, thank you. And we will let you know what happens tonight at 10:30. Thanks for coming. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Okay. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Oh, Bart, go ahead.
Jay, thanks for your comments about the meeting. I was somewhat daunted. I apologize for not being there because I am not feeling particularly good. I have a mild temperature or fever, so I apologize for not being there. But relevant to that, it seems to me that however you want to move this forward, however we decide to move this forward, I think we need to come up with a plan where we're not here at 10:30, 11:30 at night. We can take that offline, but I think that's an agenda item that perhaps we can work on between now and the next meeting. So thanks for raising that.
Right. And in the case of tonight's agenda, we happen to have several items that just by their very nature are going to be time consuming, to wit, appointments to town committees, hearing from the lovely folks at V-Trans about the Route 2 bridge replacement project, and hearing from the town center committee about their proposed plans, and some, of course, shorter things. So with that in mind, let's move on to our first agenda item, consideration of appointments to town committees. In May each year, typically the second meeting in May. Yes, sorry. Okay, I guess somebody moving on. Each year in May, on the second meeting in May, we vote on appointments to town committees and to town volunteer positions. Leading up to this, we solicit for quite some time prior to this meeting to find people to occupy volunteer seats, occupy volunteer positions. It's very hard to run town government when committees that are tasked with particular, jobs can't make quorum. For example, the Planning Commission recently could not meet because they did not get a quorum. So I'm grateful for the people who applied. It looks like though at the end of the night, we will still have some positions that we do not have people for, and we'll be posting those and trying to fill those. As we go through the list in the select board members packets, the first commission that is listed is the Planning Commission. This is a 9-member commission with 4-year terms. There are 4 four-year terms open, 4 4-year terms, and 1 vacant position to be filled. So I guess that's a total of 5 slots, right?
4 4-year terms,
And one vacant.
position.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct, Jay.
Okay, so we have 3 people who have applied for the planning commission. Their letters are in the packet. Adam Wood, Chris Granda, Virginia Clark. Chris Granda, Virginia Clark are applying to renew their current terms. Adam is applying for a 4-year term. Chris Cole and Allison Anand, current members, are not interested in serving another term. Is there any discussion, or are you ready to proceed to a motion?
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the Planning Commission, Adam Wood, Chris Branda, and Virginia Clark to 4-year terms.
This is Jeff. I'll second that.
Okay, we have motion second from David Sander to a motion from David Sander to move to appoint Adam Wood, Chris Granda, Virginia Clark to 4-year terms. That is seconded by Jeff Ford. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Jeff, I.
This is David, I.
This is
Bard, aye.
I was about to jump in on you. This is J.I. Congratulations to Chris, Virginia, and Adam. Our second item on the list is the Development Review Board. This is a 5-member board with 3-year terms. The following appointments are available: 2 3-year terms and 2 1-year alternate positions. We have 2 people who have applied to be on the DRB, David Sunshine and Matt Dyer. Current member Ian Bender has not expressed interest in another term, and we don't have anybody who's applied for the alternate positions. There is a motion in the packet, or is there any discussion before you can continue?
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the Development Review Board, David Sunshine and Matt Dyer to 3-year terms.
This is Jeff. I'll second that.
And we have a motion from David Sander and a second from Jeff Ford to appoint David Sunshine and Matt Dyer to 3-year terms. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Jeff, I.
This is David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Congratulations, David and Matt. Thank you for your continued service. Next is the Richmond Conservation Commission. This is a 7-member commission with 4-year terms, and then there are 2 alternates. The following appointments are available: 1 4-year term, 1 currently vacant position that would run until 2026, 1 vacant position to be filled running to 2024, 1 vacant alternate position to be filled running to 2025. There are 4 people who have applied: Allison Anand, Bob Galvin, Elizabeth Wright, and Jeanette Malone. The Richmond Conservation Commission met on May 9th and recommended Elizabeth Wright to renew her 4-year term, Allison Anand as the alternate running to 2025, Bob Galvin as a vacant term running to 2024, and Jeanette Malone to the vacant term running to 2026.
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the Richmond Conservation Commission, Elizabeth Wright to a 4-year term, Allison Anand to a vacant alternate term running until 2025, Bob Galvin to a vacant term running until 2024, Jeanette Malone to a vacant term running until 2026.
We need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion for David Sander and a second from Jeff Ford to appoint Elizabeth Wright to the Richmond Conservation Commission for a 4-year term, Allison Anand to a vacant alternate term running to 2025, Bob Galvin to a vacant term running to 2024, and Jeanette Malone to a vacant term running to 2026. Please state your name and your vote.
It's Jeff, I.
This is David, I.
Bard, aye.
Want me to abstain because I missed part of that?
You were here for that part. Go ahead.
Okay, Lisa, abstaining.
And J.I. Congratulations, Elizabeth, Allison, Bob, and Jeanette. Our next committee to look at is the Trails Committee. This is the committee that manages a trail and path network, including making connections to neighborhoods. This is a 14-member committee with 3-year terms. The following appointments are available: 4 3-year terms, 2 vacant terms to be filled running to 2024. 1 person, Tyler Merritt, has applied to renew a 3-year term. Current member Willie Lee is not interested in serving again. Mike Donahue has expressed interest in renewing a term, but we don't have a letter from him.
And Jay, just so you know, we did have one that flipped through the cracks. Alexandra McAleer is also interested in the Trails Committee.
Okay, so we have slots for all of those people: Tyler, Mike, and Allison McAleer.
Alexandra.
Alexandra, I apologize. Okay, any discussion?
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the Trails Committee, Alexandra McAleer, Tyler Merritt, and Mike Donahue to 3-year terms.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Jeff Ford, to appoint Tyler Merritt, Alexandra McAleer, and Mike Donahue to the Trails Committee for 3-year terms. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye. Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, I. Our next committee in the memo is the Andrews Community Forest Committee. This is a 9-member committee with 3-year terms. They have an unusual structure that I think is unique in our town structure, where the committee itself recommends its own members. Members have to be approved by the ACF committee by a 2/3 vote, and then it is on to us to ratify them. There are 5 people who've applied for the positions, 3 of whom are currently on the committee and were recommended by the ACF membership. We have 2 additional people, Ian Stokes and Leanna Scheidman, who got letters in, who are not currently on the board and were not recommended by the ACF. We have a couple options open. One of them is to ask the ACF committee to consider these additional applicants and get back to us at the next meeting. Or we could move to accept the applications from the ACF committee and appoint the people listed in the memo.
I move that we table this to the next meeting.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, we have a motion by David Sander and a second from Jeff Ford to table this. There is still opportunity to discuss it. Is there any discussion on this motion?
So.
Yeah.
So to be clear, there are 5 people who are interested in 3 positions, is that correct?
That's correct. And there's a qualification also. Caitlin Littlefield is the delegate to the ACF committee from the Conservation Commission. So the Conservation Commission essentially appoints her, and I believe that is the person that they recommended. And so then we have 4 people applying to 2 more seats.
So my understanding is the Conservation Commission hasn't met yet to make that recommendation.
And all the more reason possibly to table.
Yeah, okay, that's just wanted to be clear.
Okay, thank you for that point. Okay,
Is there a motion?
there is a motion to table this and a second motion made by David and a second from Jeff Ford. Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And
Bard, aye.
Jay, I. Sorry, Bart, without you sitting here keeping an eye on me, I keep forgetting you're up there. I apologize. The Town Center and Library Building Committee. This committee is focused on long-term uses and capital projects for the town center and library buildings. You will hear at length from them tonight. We'll probably have a crowd of people storm in at about the time that's supposed to be held. This is an 11-member committee with open-ended terms, so it's not term limited. The following appointments are available: 2 open-ended vacant positions. There are no applicants for any of the vacant terms. So we have 9 current members and no one applying. The board could,
We actually have 7 active members.
7 active
And
members.
there's 2 that Christine Warnicki has officially resigned. And Brian Tellstone is not officially resigned, but he hasn't shown up for a meeting in a couple of years.
Yeah,
Okay, so we have a couple of options. We have no one to appoint. We can do nothing and move on, or we could accept the resignations of Brian and Christine and reduce the committee to 7 to match the number of active members.
Jay, this is David. I move to accept the resignations of Brian Tellstone and Christine Warnicki from the Town Center and Library Building Committee, and to reduce the size of the committee to 7 to match the number of active members on the Richmond Town Center.
So I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander to accept the resignations of Brian Tellstone and Christine Warnicki from the Town Center and Library Building Committee and reduce the size of the committee to 7 to match the number of active members. That has been seconded by Jeff Ford. Is there any discussion?
Hold on a minute.
Jay, it's Bard, just because we have both Josh and Jeff on that committee, are there any concerns with doing this? I assume not, but I just thought I'd call the question.
No, and I'd like to, clarify, at least Christine Wernicke's position. Christine Wernicke has been a very valuable member of this committee. She was board chair here at the select board member, and she served on that committee for at least a couple of years. Committee's been around for 4 years plus. She's taken a new leadership role at the hospital. And she's also doing, I think it's a PhD. So she's tapped out. She liked this committee and she was really a valuable member. And she reluctantly is asking to resign.
And it will definitely be to the committee's loss, but Christine is, even as amazing a person as Christine is, there are only so many hours in her day, and sleep needs to take part of those.
Jay, this is David. I just want to thank Christine for her dedication and her contribution to the committee. And personal aside, I'm wondering what she's going to do with all that free time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept two resignations of Brian Telston, Christine Wernicke, and reduce the size of the committee to 7. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, aye.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Our next committee on the list is the Recreation Committee. The Recreation Committee is a 5-member committee. Actually, we can go beyond 5, but right now it has 5. And our charter says that at least 3/5 of the committee must be Richmond residents. Unusually for our town governance structure, we also have seats open for Bolton and Huntington residents. Right now, we have one opening for a Richmond resident for a 3-year term. The person who is currently in that slot has not expressed interest in running again. And so we have no one to appoint. This would be a case where we would definitely need to go beat the bushes. There's a lot that is on the Recreation Committee platter right now, but we want it to be representative of Richmond residents and not be half Richmond, half non-Richmonders. So if anybody listening to this call or anybody looking at it later on MMC TV says, wow, I had no idea, I too want to be a member of the Richmond Recreation Committee, please contact us ASAP. I'm looking at you, Denise.
Um,
Go ahead.
Can I make a comment relative to that? I think there might be renewed interest in this committee. There are proposals for volunteer green that are in circulation right now. And I wouldn't mind having a discussion as a future agenda item, the charter, as you call it, or the makeup of this committee. Because, we haven't invested much money in the recreation department or in volunteer green in quite some time. And we might want to reevaluate our out-of-town, whether to have out-of-town members if we're going to be investing substantial amounts of money in a Richmond town asset.
Right.
Maybe for a future agenda item sometime.
I would agree. I've had numerous people say, why are we doing that? It possibly was a good idea at the time. Maybe it's still a good idea.
Mhm.
But tonight we have no one to appoint unless anybody wants to stand up in the crowd.
Mhm.
Okay. Our next committee is the Gardening Committee. This is a newly created committee that does not as yet have any members. The Gardening Committee has an informal charter at this point. Well, no, we did pass it, to maintain landscaping and volunteers green, Browns Court, Round Church Green, town welcome signs, and also to support and explore supporting community gardens. We currently do have a community garden, but it's on private property. And we would like to see possibly one constructed on municipal property, maybe one larger. This is a 5-member committee as currently designed with 2 3-year terms and 3 2-year terms. All of these are currently open. We have had 4 people apply for 2 or 3-year term. Caroline Schultz, Schlutius, Aaron Farr, Marilyn Johnson, and Mary Houle. We have 2 people, Hannah Harrington and Jim Feinson, who are currently administering the existing community garden. They've applied to either share a seat or participate as a non-member volunteer. Now, I don't have a breakdown of who would prefer a 2-year term or 3-year term. Mary? Okay, I didn't tell her she could do that. Okay. I'm going to go on a limb and guess Mary, with her infinite energy, would probably not mind a 3, but I don't otherwise have an idea of how to split this up. I would be amenable to changing the committee to a 6-member committee so that everybody who's currently interested could have a seat. I don't think it'd be a problem to have an even number of members on the committee. But what is the select board's interest?
We have more applicants than 6. I count 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Are you looking at the gardening committee?
Mhm.
It's the same names repeated.
Same names twice, Jeff.
Hmm?
It's the same names twice.
It's just a draft motion.
Oh.
And you'd cross out who Right, or circle who goes for 3, circle who goes for 2.
Okay,
Right.
so, yeah. So,
Okay.
so my idea as chair is only my idea. We could make it a 6-member committee and make Hannah and Jim 2 of the 2-year members, randomly pick a 3rd person to be 2-year and make the other 3 years, or we could leave somebody out. What would you like to do?
Yes,
That,
whatever that is.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to make this committee have 6 members.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander,
A second, I'll second.
and we have a
that.
second from Jeff Forward to make the gardening committee a 6-member committee. Is there any discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
So,
Okay, ahead.
so one question. It's awkward to have an even number committee.
They don't vote. They're just gonna
Not
go.
vote. Okay, it's fine. It's
Well,
fine. I don't-
You can,
yeah,
Jeff, I'm going to charge you with finding a 7th member.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Sure.
true. Right. Please state your name and your vote. This is
Yeah, five?
David, I.
Bard, I.
J.I. Okay, that said, we now have a 6-member gardening committee. My is Mary back yet?
She'll take 3.
Okay. I would suggest Hannah and Jim, just having them be 2-year terms, and I would entertain you randomly picking a 3rd person. I don't care. Somebody make a motion.
I see. Okay.
Okay, actually, how about this? Let's make Aaron, Hannah, and Jim 2-year terms and the other 3-year terms.
Yes. Move that.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second
I trust Duncan to get them.
from David Sander and seconded by Jeff Ford to appoint Aaron Farr, Hannah Harrington, and Jim Feinson to 2-year terms, and Mary Hool, Marilyn Johnson, and Caroline Schultius. I apologize, I mispronounced that. Okay, to 3-year terms. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, I.
And J.I. Thank you so much. I appreciate your flexibility. Somebody tell Mary when she gets back. Housing Committee.
Watering plants and heather.
Yeah, likely.
Okay, Housing Committee. The Housing Committee is a committee to advise the Select Board, Planning Commission, DRB, and town staff on the housing needs of the town of Richmond. It is a 5-member committee with 2 3-year terms, 3 2-year terms, and 2 alternates. We have 2 vacant positions running to 2024. We have 2 vacant alternate positions to be filled running to 2024. If you're counting, that's 3 current members. And there are no applications. So again, I would like to speak to the assembled voters of the town of Richmond. If you would like to have a voice in housing issues, we would love to hear from you so we can appoint you to the Housing Committee. Next, the Transportation Committee. By their name, you can kind of assume what they talk about. This is a minimum of 5 members. So this is one that can be as large as we want. There are currently 2 open 3-year. Sorry.
Keep going.
Okay. 2 people, Kathleen Gent and Chris Cole, have applied for a 3-year term. And the Transportation Committee enthusiastically supports Susan Wells as an additional member. So all 3 of those are eligible to be on it because we can make it as big as we want. Do we have a motion?
I move to appoint to the Transportation Committee Kathleen Gent, Chris Cole, and enthusiastically Stephen Wells to a 3-year term.
This is David. I will second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford to appoint Kathleen Gent and Chris Cole to the Transportation Committee and enthusiastically appoint Susan Wells to the Transportation Committee. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, I.
And J.I. Moving on through, we are getting there. The next committee is the Parking Advisory Committee. This committee has done great work with the parking situation at Bombardier Meadow, as well as over Rucker Park and the other lot along Cochrane Road. Also the small lots out at the entrance to the town over by the Checkered House Bridge. This is a 5-member committee with 3-year terms. The following appointments are available: 3 3-year terms. We have 2 applicants for those, Diane Mariano and John Cohn. Diane and John are applying to renew their current terms. Kevin McAleer is not interested in serving another term.
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the Parking Advisory Committee Diane Mariano and John Cohn to 3-year terms.
I'll second.
We have a motion from David Sander, seconded by Lisa Miller, to appoint Diane Mariano and John Cohn to 3-year terms in the Parking Advisory Committee. Jeff?
So I'll point out, I support this, and I support these, and I really appreciate their effort on it. Diane Mariano and John Cohn are spouses.
Mhm.
And this is not necessarily a voting committee either. I don't think this is a problem, but in some other instances, that can be a problem.
So far, it seemed to not have been a conflict of interest. Is there any further discussion? Lisa?
I tuned into that committee a lot,
Mhm.
and I watched them work, and those two who are renewing are great minds, and look at what they've done at Dudley Road.
I've,
Instead of murders and fistfights, there's been some amount of order.
well, we've cut the murders down.
Yeah, they moved. But yeah, I think they're doing wonderful work,
I do
and there's a
too.
lot more needed from them. I think having the continuity that with them willing to reassign or
Mhm.
re-up is really important.
I agree.
Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Okay, our ARPA Committee, American Rescue Plan Act Committee. This committee has been meeting for a year and a half. We have some work left to do. We have some items relating to this on the agenda tonight. This is a 9-member committee with 1-year terms. Jay Furr and Jeff Ford currently fill the 2 select board terms. Josh Arneson represents the 1 town manager position. The other guy,
We don't
Stay
talk
out.
about Bruno.
we have, there are 5 1-year resident terms and 1 1-year business owner term. We have 3 people, unless Duncan knows something I don't, who have currently applied for being reappointed to the resident terms. Carol Bounty, Mary Hool, and Molly Dugan. Duncan, have you heard from anybody else?
I
Okay,
have not heard from anyone else.
okay, so we have a couple of motions in the memo.
Okay, I move to appoint to the ARPA committee Molly Dugan, Mary Hool, and Carol LaBounty to a 1-year resident term.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford and a second from David Sander to appoint Molly Dugan, Mary Hool, and Carol Bounty to the ARPA committee for a 1-year resident term. Lisa,
Discussion. I see the business owner seat is not filled.
that
It
is
seems
correct.
to be there's only one of them. That seems to be an important voice. It's not.
The person who is filling that declined to be reappointed.
I'll put my letter.
Eric doesn't want.
Yeah, who was it?
Eric, the guy with the coffee company, Eric
Benson,
Svensson.
I believe he resigned, right?
Yep. West Wing. I don't particularly see a need to make Denise write us a letter. She's right here. We know who she is. Do you guys want to amend the motion to include
I
her
would amend my motion to include Denise Barnard.
to a 1-year
to
business
a
owner
1-year
position?
term.
I'll proudly second that.
Okay. So the motion is now to move to appoint to the ARPA committee Molly Dugan, Mary Hool, Carol Bounty to 1-year resident terms and to appoint Denise Barnard to a 1-year business owner term. And that has been, the amendment has been accepted by David. Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. We also have a motion for the town manager and ARPA select board slots.
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint to the ARPA committee, Jay Furr and Jeff Forward to a 1-year select board member term. And Josh Arneson to a 1-year town manager term.
Lisa, and I'll second.
We have a motion from David Sander and a second from Lisa Miller to appoint Jay Furr and Jeff Forward to 1-year select board terms in the ARPA committee and Josh Arneson to a 1-year town manager term. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I'll abstain since I'm in it.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay abstains.
Just got in.
Is that how many members are on that now then for not everybody re-up?
Well, Tom Lyle did not, and Eric resigned and Rachel resigned. So Denise replaces Eric. So that implies that I think that means we would have 2 seats open, Rachel and Tom's. Rachel has definitely told us she does not have the time to be on it. We have not heard from Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is one that historically we have not appointed people to because these people were so self-serving, they did it anyway. The 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Committee. Historically, this has been a large group of people, very self-sacrificing, who have pulled this together for, I think, 30 plus years. They asked us last year to relieve them of some of the burden. The select board agreed to pay for the fireworks directly and not stick them with fundraising obligation. However, they are still organizing the rest of the July 4th parade, fireworks, and volunteers green activities. We do not have on this committee a defined number of members or a length of term. It's another one of those kind of open-ended. Susan Glennon, who is kind of in charge up to this point, sent in a list of everybody who's ever taken part, and we said, if we do that and they haven't showed up so far, it makes hard to get a quorum if we ever do have a vote. So she paired.
Hate to interrupt you, but should we tell her?
Yeah, it's okay. Keep going.
Yep.
Okay.
So we trimmed it down to the people who have actually been coming to the July 4th meetings, and those are the members you see in your memo. So would anybody care to make a motion to appoint the following to the committee?
Want clarification, would these be one-year terms, open-ended terms?
We don't have a length of term defined. It could be open-ended.
Okay.
I think you should do 1 year, like.
We can also do 1 year,
Yeah.
whatever.
Hey, this is David. I move to appoint to the 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Committee, Amanda Cobb, Brian Maru, Chris Jenkins, Jay Furr, Justin Spence, Norman Perkins, Stephanie Hartsfield, and Susan Glennon to a 1-year term.
Second that.
We have a motion for David Sander, a second from Jeff Ford to appoint Amanda Cobb, Brian Moreau, Chris Jenkins, Jay Furr, Justin Spence, Norman Perkins, Stephanie Hartsfield, Susan Glennon to the 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Committee. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay,
Bard,
aye.
aye.
Oh, and Bart, I'm sorry. I'm spacing out tonight, Bard. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that vote. Our next one is the Water and Sewer Commission. We do not at this time appoint those members. We will appoint them at the June 19th, 2023 meeting for terms to begin in July. However, Aaron Farr and Morgan Wollover, who are the committee members in addition to 3 select board members, Bart, David and I, we do have candidates for the 2 appointed slots, and Aaron and Morgan have both done great jobs so far. So unless somebody else steps forward, we will look to appointing them at June 19th. We're almost done with, well, that's all the committees. I'm going to go through a list of other volunteer openings, and if you choose to discuss any of them, you can, but I'd like to just list them all since it's probably one big motion. Animal Control Officer. 1 year, one year term, 1 opening. Andy Squires has applied to renew. Energy Coordinator, this one I'm not sure about. We have 1 opening for 1 year term, and some guy named Jeff Ford has applied to be reappointed.
Oh, that's good.
Emergency Management Director, 1 opening for 1 year term. Josh has been doing that job. We would be reappointing him. Town Fence Viewer, we have 2 openings for a 1 year term. For the last few years, we've only had 1 person. So if anybody would like to be another town fence viewer. Okay. The other one is my wife. She's very nice to get along with. Carol Furr would be reappointed to 1 year term. John Cart has applied to be reappointed to the Inspector of Lumber, Shingles and Wood. For the Richmond Rescue Board of Directors Liaison, we have 1 opening for a 1 year term. Amy Wardwell has applied. For Tree Warden, we have the unusual situation of having 2 candidates for 1 slot. Matt Leonetti has applied to renew the term. Caitlin Littlefield has applied to be appointed. Josh, would it be possible? Can we just have 2, or would that be a problem?
That's a good question. I don't know. Duncan, did you do any research on if we can have 2 tree wardens?
I did not. I do not know.
I would suggest then we table that one unless somebody feels strongly on one or the other.
I think we should table that.
Okay, Service Officer, which I think is an almost moribund position.
Yeah, that one.
We have no applicants.
And we don't necessarily need it. I know that Martha Lang, previous assistant to the town clerk, had done it for a few years, and every year she said, if you really want me to continue, I will, but it's not really necessary in today's day and age with United Way and other resources.
Right, and in any event, she's retired to Maui. So next, Weigher of Coal. That is a open-ended position, as many people who are insane enough to want to take on all that work can be appointed. Right now, we have 2 applicants, Jeff Ford and Jay Furr. Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission Advisory Committee. we have one opening for an alternate for 2 years. And Virginia Clark has applied to be the alternate. I guess she's the existing person, but she wants to drop down to alternate. Is
Well,
that right?
I think that Keith Oborn is our primary. And
Okay.
then Virginia has jumped in when we were in between planners. So I think he'll stay on as a primary. Virginia.
And she will be the alternate. Okay, Chittenden Solid Waste District. We are still part of the Chittenden Solid Waste District, even though Casella obviously is operating our dump. We can still use all their facilities. We do have a representative on the CSWD board. Logan Haig has done a great job representing the town for a few years, but is not interested in continuing. So we have one opening for 2-year term and one alternate position for 2-year term. If anybody would like to speak up now, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we will leave that one open until we find somebody. So we have one very long motion. If anybody would like to make that motion, and again, we would be temporarily tabling the tree warden position.
Jay, this is David. I move to appoint Andy Squires to the 1-year term for Animal Control Officer, Jeff Forward to the 1-year term for Energy Coordinator, Josh Arneson to the 1-year term for Emergency Management Director, Carol Furr to the 1-year term for Town Fence Viewer, John Cart to the 1-year term for Inspector of Lumber, Shingles and Wood, Amy Wardwell to the 1-year term for Richmond Rescue Board of Directors Liaison. Skipping tree warden, Jay Furr and Jeff Forward to the 1-year term for Weir of Coal. And to appoint Virginia Clark to the 2-year term as the alternate to the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission Planning Advisory Committee. And I believe we said this before, but if not, would like to table the tree warden position at this time.
Okay, we have a lengthy motion made by David Center to appoint a whole bunch of people. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Okay, to restate the motion that we're voting on, the motion is to appoint Andy Squires to Animal Control Officer for 1 year, Jeff Ford to the Energy Coordinator for 1 year, Josh Arneson to the Emergency Management Director for 1 year, Carol Furr to the Town Fence Viewer for 1 year, John Cart to Inspector of Lumber, Shingles and Wood for 1 year, Amy Wardwell to the Richmond Rescue Board of Directors Liaison/Representative for 1 year, Jay Furr and Jeff Ford to the Weir of Coal position for 1 year. And we would be appointing Virginia Clark to the 2-year position as our CCRPC Planning Advisory Committee alternate. And we would be temporarily tabling the decision of whether to vote Matt or Caitlin in for tree warden. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
While I enthusiastically support all of these nominees, since my name is in here twice, I'm going to abstain.
This is David. Aye.
Bard, aye.
And Jay abstain. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody who is here and calling in person and watching this later, who has agreed to take a town volunteer position. As I've said, probably till people are sick of hearing it lately on Front Porch Forum, we need people to help run this town. No matter how much we'd might like to try, we can't do it ourselves. And we're very fortunate to have such a committed group of volunteers. Denise?
Who's our health officer?
Adam Wood.
And what, thank you.
We do have a position for assistant health officer, but nobody applied for it. I'm looking at you. Come on. Okay. Next, moving on. We are currently 11 minutes ahead of schedule, except for, of course, we did have some public comment. Our next agenda item is consideration of setting a public hearing date for proposed amendments to the zoning regulations for the Village Residential Commercial District and the Gateway Residential Commercial District. To be brief, we held a hearing some weeks ago to review the changes to those two districts, the Village Residential Commercial District and the Gateway Residential Commercial District. At that hearing, there was discussion from members of the select board present that we would like to remove some parcels along Jericho Road from the Village Residential Commercial District. We sent that back to the Planning Commission. They sent it to us and we approved it, but it turns out that we had one of those gotchas. We did not do it exactly right. Would you like to discuss further?
I think if Virginia's on the call, she could do it far better than me or Keith. I just saw Keith.
I don't currently see either.
Neither do I.
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, hi Keith, sorry. So Keith, yeah, go ahead.
It's probably my bald head, but that's okay. The protocols weren't followed last time, for that portion of the meeting. Or for the amendments that are required. What we have done is we've put on the back of the memo that Virginia, executed on 2 motions. One is to vacate the one motion, and then one is basically to clean everything up and move forward on the public hearing.
Okay. So the motion to vacate is at the bottom of your memo on page 8. If somebody would like to move that.
There's 2 different motions.
There are 2 different motions. So vacating comes first.
I move that the motion of May 1st, 2023 to approve the changes to sections 3.3.3, 3.3.5 D, 3.4.3, and 3.4.5 D as presented by the Chair of the Planning Commission be vacated as these changes to the documents, quote, Gateway and Village Residential Commercial Zoning Districts and associated amendments, unquote, were not correctly approved for recommendation by the chair of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye. Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, so I didn't restate that. I apologize. That was a motion to vacate our previous action because it wasn't done by the letter. Now, the next motion is to properly move things. We need, despite the fact that the changes to the village residential commercial district were comparatively minor, they still represented a substantive change. And so we do have to have a public hearing. Rather than having this as a standalone public hearing, such as the one we had at the library, this public hearing would be taking place during the next select board meeting on June 5th, 2023. And so the motion states, the motion is to set the date for the final public hearing, ask the planning staff to carry out the required notifications.
Jay, this is David. I move that the select board set the date for the final public hearing on the documents, quote, Gateway and Village Residential / Commercial Zoning Districts and associated amendments, end quote, for June 5th, 2023, and that the planning staff carry out the required notifications. These documents amend the following sections of the Richmond zoning regulations. Section 2.5.2, 3.1.1, 3.1.2, 3.2.1, 3.2.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5.1, 3.5.2, 3.6.1, 3.6.2, 3.7.1, 3.7.2, 3.8.1, 3.8.2, 3.9.1, 3.9.2, 3.101, no, 3.10.1, 3.10.2, 4.5, 5.5, 6.1.2, 6.13, 7 in the official zoning district map. Minor references related to the district name changes have been amended in the following additional sections. Table of contents 2.1, 5.7.3, 5.7.4, 5.12.2, and index. In addition, the documents are accompanied by the required bylaw amendment reports.
Fantastic job. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a lengthy motion from David Sander, seconded by Jeff Forward, to set the date for the final public hearing on the Gateway and Village Residential Commercial Zoning Districts and associated amendments for June 5th, 2023. This will be part of our regularly scheduled select board agenda. Unless somebody needs me to, I will not restate all the sections.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
I have a procedural question. So the sections that changes to the sections that we vacated, will those be able to be discussed or changed at this particular hearing?
Minorly.
Is that Does that?
Well,
work?
the public could come to this meeting and make a compelling case that these or any other parts needed to be altered, and we might have to keep going. So I believe that Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but the entire substance of the changes is potentially available for discussion and comment.
But then would we have to go back to another meeting? So my.
If we did not just say this is good, if we made changes again, we would have to do this all over again.
The same changes that we made on May first, if we
No.
made the same changes, these sections are not necessarily referenced, are they? Or the Ds and the.
Keith,
The changes that were offered on May first are not part of this package.
and
So
we would
this
have-
is, right, so this is a clean package that the planning board, the planning commission approved back in February. There was a unilateral decision to try to change that, and that was stopped, and that was the vacated motion. And right now, you now have a totally clean slate with all the sections that were required and approved by the planning commission before you now.
this includes everything from before and our change to the Jericho Road parcels.
Right,
Oh,
the
so
map.
That's what I was wondering.
That's right.
Is that we did make, the changes we made was at that meeting, as I understood it, were related to the Jericho Road section, and that's what we'll be discussing that in June, including the Jericho Road changes.
Yes, that would be correct. You said that is why you're setting the public hearing. Absolutely.
And
Okay.
if it should happen on June 5th, that there are no further amendments,
Mhm.
then when we close that public hearing with the motion, we can then move right on to adopting them.
Okay.
However, if additional changes are made, we would have to ask the planning commission to update the materials, send them back to us. We'd have to warn another public hearing, et cetera.
Thank you.
And that's fine. I mean, that's fine tuning and that's the purpose of all this.
Okay, is there any further discussion from members of the board? This again, this is just basically saying, let's discuss it at a future date. This is not preempting comment at that hearing. This is just getting that on the agenda at another meeting. Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. It is 7:57 PM. We told the wonderful folks from V-Trans we'd try to have them on the meeting by 8. I hope it's not 3 minutes too early. You'll cope? Okay,
We'll try and get done in 5 minutes.
okay. So I'd like to invite the representative.
Do it in 5, but maybe.
Okay, so our next item relates to the Route 2 Bridge Replacement Project. This is the bridge that people think of as a fire station bridge over I-89. I'd like to invite members of the V-Trans group to come forward and do their presentation on it.
What, you think is it in the PowerPoint form?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
It's the only file on there.
Okay, so,
He says, watch your laptop explode.
yeah, I should, yeah,
No virus.
I should not be.
Yeah, it's up there, John.
We'll be all right.
Jay, while they're doing that, could Lisa and Jeff scoot a little bit closer to the microphone so we can hear them better? Thank you.
Okay, they have scooted. Okay, we ready to go? Oh, we haven't got it going yet, sorry. Got to share screen.
Rolled over the mic.
Okay, it's coming. Give me
Okay.
a second. Slideshow.
Yep.
And then if you can, when we say,
Then you say next slide, hit the button.
go for it, yeah.
Or just throw something at him, it's all good.
Either way works.
Okay. So I'll start.
Look at that beautiful blue sky.
Go over here. So good evening, everyone.
Just please be aware of the microphones.
Yep.
Because they're not.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
You know, you just start here, if you're gonna start.
No, I'm not gonna be speaking much. I'm just, how's that? Can you hear
Well,
me?
you are.
You actually don't need a microphone when I speak, so,
Could you
That is
introduce
the-
yourself? Tell us your name.
well, we're gonna get there.
Okay.
Next slide.
So we're here to talk about the US Route 2 Bridge 29 over Interstate 89. Uh-oh.
If you hit the right arrow, it should
There you
go.
So, whoops.
Nope, now we're good.
So good evening. My name is Carolyn Coda. It has that down as V-Trans Design Project Manager, but I'm still the project manager for this project, but I was recently in October promoted to the Structures Program Manager. So I'm in charge of the whole structures group at V-Trans. With me is David Peterson. He's the V-Trans project engineer. Josh Hewlett, it will be the V-Trans resident engineer on this project. I think some people are familiar with Josh. And then behind her is Stephanie Barrett. She's the public information consultant for this project. So the purpose of this meeting is just to give you an overview of the project as we designed it, talk about the anticipated project construction schedule, discuss traffic control during construction, how it might impact you, and then we have questions and comments. So just kind of an overview. I think everyone who lives in Richmond knows where this bridge is. It's not too far from the fire station. There's a nice aerial view. So project overview, we're going to review the existing bridge, review a preview of what the new bridge is going to look like, and just mention how much this project is going to cost, even though the town has no share on this project. It's a 90% federally funded, 10% state funded project. So this is just a little depiction of what we're going to be talking about as far as what a bridge is. You can see that we have a bridge railing and our deck surface treatment, which is pavement. We've got our superstructure, which consists of the deck, the beams, bearing device, and our substructure, which is our wing wall, bridge seat, stem, and footing. And so just to give you an idea, we're looking east over the bridge. Some of the conditions of this existing bridge is that it is a major collector. It's almost 500 feet long with 8 span. They call it an 8-span roll beam bridge, just short spans that add up to 500 feet. State owns it, and it was constructed in 1964. As we all know, really, you can see how this bridge is aged by looking at it from the pier point of view. So if you're on the interstate, all that reinforcing steel that's being shown, the concrete is falling off those columns. It's in very poor condition, and that's why it's a project. It's also, just so that you know, looking west over the bridge, this is a high priority bike corridor, and the existing bridge is too narrow to really accommodate bicyclists in a safe manner. So we're going to be going with a wider bridge. So I'm going to let Dave talk about the new bridge.
Sure, I'll just talk from right here since the microphone's here. So the design for the new bridge, we're reducing it down from an 8-span bridge down to 2 spans. A little shorter, 376 feet long, but we have so our beams will be 84 inches deep, so it'll be significantly deeper than the existing ones. You know, we're using some really high performance steel in the concrete, so it's galvanized. We're looking at 100-year design life. Is kind of, you know, how we design these new structures.
That great would have worked on this.
One of the big ones that Carolyn talked about is increasing the width of the bridge. So we went with a 12-foot wide lane on each side and 6-foot shoulders. And that's, you know, increases safety for bicycles. We do this for the bridge because the design life's 100 years. The approach roadway, it's not going to be that wide, but, you know, hopefully 10, 20, 30 years down the road, they'll be able to widen the whole approach out. Construction costs, we are looking at just over $19 million. That's the bridge construction and engineering oversight for the project. And like Carolyn mentioned, the split 90% federal, 10% state. The contractor for the project is Engineers Construction, ECI. They do quite a bit of work on bridges for us, so we're very familiar with them. And we have been coordinating with the existing Richmond Bolton project to make sure we're matching into their project. We're not overlapping work. We're not doing stuff twice. So just some quick bridge typical, the roadway typical, showing the increased width, 5 steel girders. We're actually doing no pavement on the bridge.
So that, it's a little less future maintenance. And it will still provide just as sturdy a structure as if there was pavement on there. And so you can see here how far north we are. The new bridge will be from the existing US 2 bridge. So by doing that, it allows us to keep the existing bridge in service. 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction, will be in service the whole time, with some, daily lane closures. And so here we have a kind of a 3D view of what the bridge will look like as you head north on the interstate. There'll be a single pier in the median, and then 2 bridge abutments on either side of the interstate.
Is it where the old bridge fell down?
Yeah, exactly.
Melted.
Not yet.
Yes.
Mid-demo, yes, mid-demolition. And then here's another view. This is looking south. Kind of if you're at the fire station, looking that way at it. You go to the next picture, kind of a good view of the Middlesex Bridge, kind of from the same angle.
Mhm.
We really use this as a, kind of a guide in how we laid out our structure. So construction schedule. So we have a 3-season construction schedule. So we're starting in 2023. Contractor anticipates being out there in June. When 23, they will be constructing all the bridge foundations, the abutments, the pier, kind of building it up. All the roadway approaches, there's a lot of fill that we have to bring in because we are reducing the spans. There's a lot of earth fill, which cheaper than buying steel girders and building abutments and piers. So that's our approach to the project. In 24, they'll come in, they'll set the steel girders, they'll pour the deck. And based on the current schedule from the contractor, they plan to have the new bridge open at the end of 24. Traffic will be on that bridge. And then the contractor will come back in 2025, demo the existing bridge and do site cleanup, turf establishment, and some final drainage structures, replacing all those. There may be some winter, or we allowed for winter work in the contract. Currently, the contractor plans to close down by November ish every year. So as far as traffic control, so our project requires the contractor to submit a full traffic control plan for every aspect of work that they have to complete. We build our specifications and notes in the project to kind of build the box that they can work in as far as timing and certain things they have to maintain at all times. So the contractor plans to maintain traffic on the existing bridge. So every day at the close of work, there'll be 2 open lanes, 1 in each direction. During the day, there may be daily lane closures on US 2, but at the end of the day, it'll be back fully open to traffic. There will be some daily lane closures on the interstate. Those will be limited to weekdays and not between 3 and 6 p.m. So we get a really good idea of traffic conditions from the culvert project. So we knew that 3 to 6 p.m. was critical during the weekday. The morning actually didn't see as bad a traffic backup. So that's one of the requirements we had in the contract. And then once the contractor needs to set the new steel and demo the existing bridge, they will be installing crossovers on the interstate. So they will be very similar to the culvert project crossovers, but they will be limited to 60 days in use per year. So we set a limited amount of days that they can have them in use. And then once they hit that 60 days, traffic's back to 2 lanes in each direction. The other big concern is access to the fire station and other drives during the project. we have a requirement that the fire station drive needs to be maintained at 40 feet wide at all times. So however the contractor needs to phase their work around that, they have to maintain that 40-foot width. And they will also be performing an all stop in all directions during an emergency. So they will have a dedicated flagger at the fire station to alert the other flaggers to stop traffic when a call comes in. Traffic needs to, or they need to get their emergency vehicles out. So that's the end. The traffic control still hasn't been approved yet. It's still in the early stages in the submittal from the contractor. So we don't have all the details quite yet, but this is kind of where things are at and what we've seen initially from them.
Okay, I have one question right off the bat. I recall when we got a preview of the project last year, that I think that came up was the exit from the fire station, which is currently at a slope, is going to, there's going to be enough fill put in there that it's going to be much more of a level exit from the fire station.
Yeah.
But in the course of building that, when you're building up the dirt there, how are you going to maintain access?
The only issue we have.
Right, so
That is an issue.
we haven't seen the contractor's plan. Some of the things we went through during design was, it'll be a phased, build 20 feet one side, do the other side.
Okay,
That will require possibly a shift of the fire station drive
okay,
north initially. So the contractor will have to bring in fill, build that all up,
Mhm.
pave it, level it out, whatever needs to be done temporarily, build the other side.
Right.
And then. put
Right.
the wall.
So this will for Richmonders who are used to seeing everything that way, besides the new bridge, that whole part of East Main is going to look very different.
Yes.
I wanted to know,
Our fire chief, Dennis, did you have any questions?
Nothing there.
Okay, nothing yet. Denise?
As someone who lives in Jonesville, are you going to be, will there be a fire truck on the other end of town like you did when we closed the bridge over here? Just for safety?
Well, we're not gonna be, they're gonna have access. the
You're
whole
gonna have
time.
act right
At all times, so,
at all times. Okay.
right, so if for some reason, so that phase of the construction, when we're building that up, that's not gonna be for a while. So if we determine that there could be an issue, then we would work with our contractor, work with the town and maybe put a fire truck over there if need be, but I don't think that there's gonna be any issues. I think the contractor, they're capable of trying to come up with good plans. So they want to make sure that the fire trucks can have access at all times. But the
And then-
bridge is never going to be closed unless
Okay,
knock on wood,
Maybe
something bad happens.
unrelated, Jay,
Mhm.
but on Cochrane Road right now, there's 2 cordings go across. Is that information that you're taking or?
it's
we-
part of the study. It's a state road study, the long-term road study for Cochrane Road.
Okay, but it has nothing to do.
Nothing to do with that, okay.
Okay, Bard, I apologize. Your hand was up. Go ahead, Bard.
Oh, no worries. I was just gonna say, if memory serves, and it mostly does, I don't think that the original iteration of the design for this bridge had 6-foot widths in terms of bike, arguably pedestrians. So somewhat atypically, perhaps, I'd like to praise the Agency of Transportation for accommodating that into the future. And I totally agree. This is a long-term 100-year project, and I really applaud having dealt with the wider shoulders on the bridge, even though unlike some bridges, mine might claim it's a bridge to nowhere. It is a bridge to somewhere, just not a great bike bridge to somewhere yet. So
Yeah,
thanks for that.
Yeah, and the roadway approaches for that will be the 6 feet and they'll taper into where the other project is on either side, so. I think at the end of the day, you guys are all gonna be very, very happy with this
Mhm.
project.
Lisa, Jeff?
So you ought to be very happy that Bard gave you a bouquet
That's
of
huge.
roses there. That's huge. You mentioned early on in the presentation that you were gonna do some bedrock probing. Could you explain what probing a bedrock means?
It's actually completed. They completed it on
Yay.
Thursday and Friday. What that is they're testing to see what the elevation of the bedrock is
Okay,
so that they can decide what they need to take out or what they're going to install for a foundation system.
You'll notice they cut the vegetation and the trees down. to do that.
We had a separate contract, to do that. It actually had to do with, making sure the bats. There are conditions. One of the reasons this project was pushed out a little bit is that, the existing bridge, cannot be removed between April 15th and October 15th because of potential for roosting of those bats.
Mhm.
So that is why the contract was pushed out another season, so that if the contractor so the contractor can remove it during the winter time.
Is there blasting involved when you
Potentially,
excavate?
potentially. It depends on a few factors,
What you find, yeah.
yeah.
Could you coordinate with the July 4th committee, please? And there's gonna be.
I don't think
blasting.
the
Are you on
bridge-
that committee?
I'm not on that. committee.
You're not on that committee? But I thought there was some openings for Josh to be on the
I'm sorry.
committee. Had to get it in.
David, question? Okay, David's good. Jeff, you got your goods?
I'm good.
Lisa? Bard? Okay, I think we've asked all the questions for the select board. Andy?
I would like to know as to how much or more it costs also to build a bridge on a curve instead of a straight bridge across.
That's a good question.
It is a good question, and I think there's a lot that kind of goes into that. To build a straight bridge and then have the approaches be geometrically, so the curves. Not as, to meet the speed limit, so they won't be as sharp. So if we did a straight bridge, you'd have to have a much sharper curve coming into it. By curving the whole bridge, it's a much gentler curve, and less kind of roadway geometric work, like how you kind of configure the road. And the cost, the steel is, it's really, there's some erection, like the size of the steel, some erection, how you place them. There's a few more difficulties, but really, in this location, trying to get a straight bridge in there would be much more difficult than a curved bridge.
Yeah, and one of the reasons, well, one of the purposes, no, and one of the reasons why too is that we want to maintain traffic on the existing bridge. So that really restricts you into what you can put in place there. And I think they did look at, way back when they had scoped it, I think they did look at something similar to that, but it was too much impact. I mean, as it is, of all the people being impacted the most on this project, it really is the board. And I think everyone knows that. And so what?
And the fire department.
In the fire department. So they're the ones being impacted the most. And, we tried our best to minimize those impacts to the best of our ability. But in order to maintain traffic, that saves a lot of money. If we had to put in a temporary bridge, that temporary bridge would probably cost us close to $2 million. Right now, just with the way, the cost of everything. When we originally planned this project before COVID, our estimate was probably closer to around 10 million. And just the cost of doing business and building is just, it's getting really high. Yes.
Look at your diagram.
Mhm.
You go from this point to this point in a straight line. And this is the older road. You've got an ample space there to curve that around. And this is gonna be a torn up anyway. And moved, so.
Okay,
It just, I oppose to the curved bridge.
Okay.
okay. Any further comment or questions from members of the public? From the select board? Denise?
Will you try to work around the school bus schedule at all? I mean, will you start after 8 o'clock in the morning?
No, they'll be starting at probably 7 a.m. in the morning. We will, if it is an issue That's why we have Stephanie here. Stephanie will get all the phone calls if there's an issue. You can contact, but I mean, typically,
I guess what I'm saying is if
if
it's possible to, you know, whoever the flagging staff is or whatever, when they see a school bus. We're having a hard enough time getting school bus drivers. So when the school buses come through, you know, they're on a time crunch and it would be nice if you let them go through when you see them in line. And maybe
If
have
they're-
something to the flaggers to let them know, you know, these kids got to get to school.
You've already got that going on Route 2 right now.
And it's a
They're already
mess,
tearing up Route 2 right now.
but they're not that project.
Okay, Heidi?
So that's something we can talk. We haven't had our pre-construction meeting
Right.
and where we actually will meet with the contractor and say, hey, these are some of the concerns that the town has, you know, when you see the school buses, let go. Now, remember, we are trying to maintain two-way traffic at all times. There are gonna be those times. And it could be that when the buses go through to start off, maybe, you know, it is gonna be that morning, it will be the 2 lanes, but then in the afternoon, it could be flagging. Who's to say, but, I mean, that's the goal eventually, you know, the
We're
start
already
of.
living with one mess down
Right.
there.
But we're tough. We're Richmonders. We can take it.
But I mean, I think that's the thing with the project is once the contractor gets that traffic, it takes time to get things moving. And once the traffic is on that 2 lane, on our existing bridge, but we are gonna shift the road over a little bit to make things work. They're gonna be down on the interstate for a lot of the time, building those abutments and the piers. So they're not gonna be necessarily affecting what's going on in Route 2 all the time.
Heidi?
So, in regards to the fire department, what I'm seeing, and I just want to make sure that the fire chief and you folks are all set, that it will raise the parking lot, so it's not going to be a steep incline, so it's going to be a benefit to the fire department by increasing that, and you guys are going to be paving that and taking care of that, and that will be open at all times. Is that correct?
It is correct,
Yeah.
except when they're actually, so what's gonna happen is that when they actually have to build that, they're gonna have to, like you say, will build, like, they may build 20 feet of it, get it up to grade, then build the other 20 feet, get up to grade, then they're gonna pave it. And when that happens, we will work with the fire department to ensure that they always have, we're not gonna leave the town without their fire department. So, I mean, that's one thing that we are gonna be, it's a top priority for us. The contractor's gonna know that. I think we already said to the contractor, you know, here's the important things, and that was one of them, having access. And the fact that they're already saying, I have a dedicated flagger to make sure that those emergency vehicles can get in and out, that's important.
David?
Let's say if there is a problem, we can move a truck or two over to town garage.
And that, I think we talked about that before when I was here. So that is a possibility. And it's the same thing when the wards have their driveway done. Guess what? They're not gonna be able to get in and out of their driveway very easily because it's the construction part of it. So we have to make that work for them. So access will be an issue for a day or two.
Their driveway is scheduled to be worked on starting in July.
Oh, that's good to know. And
Okay.
because their driveways being totally different than what they have now. So we have to make sure they can, you know, that all their fuel trucks, anything utility wise can still get up that driveway so that they have access to that.
Okay, we have a question from David Sander over here.
Oh, just to follow up, the elevation of Route 2 and the curb cut for the fire department driveway will be 8 feet higher than it is now.
Yep.
It's no secret the fire station was an afterthought and built on the cheap. There are times when the fire trucks go out in the winter, but they can't come back because they can't make the grade on the driveway. So when this first came up, we reached out to V-Trans and said, let's fix this. And that was what we worked through. So in the end, the Route 2 bridge has a sharp angle and curve. That'll be less, the bridge will be straighter. And we won't have as much of a nightmare with the driveway to contend with. So we are giving up some land, but we're
Yes,
getting.
right.
We're getting a real boost to the town. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we get a thumbs up from Mr. Bissett back there, so we're good. Okay. Okay, want to thank you guys for coming and looking forward to this.
I just want you to know. I didn't do it in 10, but I did it in 24.
Right, we are 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Get out of here. Okay. So thank you all so much. Our next agenda item is an update from the Town Center and Library Building Committee.
So we don't have the architects here at the moment.
They will, okay, what time will they be
We
expected?
asked them to be here at 8:30. What you might want to do is move
We'll just jump something up.
to something else.
Okay,
The licenses are something simple.
so we can, yeah,
Liquor license would be easy.
yeah, okay, so, I'd like to move item K up. Item K is approval of liquor licenses. We've already heard from one of the applicants. The liquor licenses are on page 11 of your memo. We have an application from the Hatchet for a first and third class liquor license. The Big Spruce for first and third class liquor license, and a second class license, tobacco license, and tobacco substitute endorsement for the mobile station. So for those of you watching at home who go, what are these licenses? First class is to serve beer and wine on site. Third class is to serve spirits on site. Second class is to sell beer and wine to be consumed off premises. So Hatchet is basically wanting to extend their right to sell beer, wine, and liquor on site. Ditto for Big Spruce, whereas the mobile is to be taken off site. We do not have to address the liquor store because the state of Vermont licenses that directly. There are 3 motions in your packet for these 3 entities.
Shush them or I'll go out there.
Yeah, if you would. We should get Mary a smacking stick and just.
I don't think she needs
She
it.
doesn't need one. She can use her fist.
Okay, so we have on top of page 12, we have 3 motions. Is there any discussion of these liquor licenses before we move them?
Jay, this is David. I move to approve
Glad you
first
were
and
my
third
kid.
class liquor licenses for Hatchet Enterprises doing business as Hatchet Tap the Table.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander,
I'll second.
second from Lisa Miller to approve first and third class liquor licenses for Hatchet Enterprises doing business as Hatchet Tap and Table. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay.
Bard, aye.
Oh, there he is. Your camera was off for a second or something. Okay, that is approved. Hatchet liquor licenses, first and third class have been approved. Next,
I'll move it. Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
at least let's do it. It's fun.
I move to approve first and third class liquor licenses for the Richmond Yacht Club LLC doing business as the Big Spruce.
This is David. I will second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion from Lisa Miller. David Sanders has seconded to approve a first and third class liquor license for the Richmond Yacht Club LLC doing business as the Big Spruce. Please
I
state your
just
name.
want to say that
Okay.
I'm glad Richmond is up and coming and we finally have a yacht club.
Absolutely.
I have to wonder where that came from, but that's okay. We can talk about it later.
Oh, we've got weirder business entities in town. Trust me on
Oh,
this.
good.
Yeah. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. So we have approved a first and third class liquor license for the Richmond Yacht Club doing business as a Big Spruce.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve a second class liquor license, a tobacco license, and a tobacco substitute endorsement for Summit Stores LLC doing business as the mobile station.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander to approve a second class liquor license, a tobacco license, and a tobacco substitute endorsement for Summit Stores LLC doing business as a mobile station, seconded by Jeff Ford. Please state your name and your vote.
Can we discuss?
Oh, absolutely.
Do we have to approve this? I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with the request or the,
Share your
Application.
concern though. What's your,
I just find it strange.
what,
Um,
go ahead. The taking beer and wine off premises?
No, I mean, selling it right there. It just seems like that's a commuter stop. I guess on the way to work, they would
Well-
tank up, but
Grab your beer on the way home.
It's one of the things that
Yeah,
makes
they
the convenience
really
store
do.
profitable, to be honest.
Inconvenient.
Well, inconvenient,
yeah.
but,
it's not profitable.
beer
That-
sales make up a big percentage of the average convenience store. If we want them there to be a gas station and other things, beer is kind of a necessary evil. But I validate your point of view.
Yeah, I just want to make.
It is
sure.
interesting. When I stop in the morning, I see people leaving with coffee. When I stop on my way home from work, I see people leaving with beer.
Mhm. Oh, that's the night shift. Oh, yeah.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Please state your name and your,
This
okay, Jeff.
relates to the gentleman who was early on at the beginning of the agenda, right?
Yes.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, probably.
Okay. With Summit, yeah. Any further discussion? Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay,
So we do have our architect here.
Okay, by all means. We will now return back to our previously scheduled agenda item on a report from the Town Center Committee.
Um, Andrew, you can sit up here. This is Andrew McCullough from Black River Design. Do we have others, Andrew, or we're ahead of schedule?
Okay,
Is that a problem?
we were planning on getting here at 8:30.
Is there somebody else still coming?
Yeah, John.
Okay.
This way.
We'll just sit there and smile and look beautiful for a second, and we will do another agenda item.
Cemetery stuff since we said.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. So that would be item H. No, not item H. Item F. Okay, so a little bit of background. The ARPA committee, the American Rescue Plan Act Committee, has been meeting for the last year and a half or so. We solicited recommendations and suggestions from via a wide range of sources from townspeople, public forums, surveys, cards, front porch forum, emails, people walking up to me in the Richmond market. And we have previously approved a small amount of money, such as the money to match the Bruin grant for we're finishing the outside of the library. We do have a few items that we are prepared to move on with, but we have still got approximately half the ARPA money completely uncommitted at this time. So this is not using up all the ARPA money. We do have a proposal from the Richmond Cemetery Commission to basically repair stones and put a fence up. Heidi, are you prepared to speak to that, or Linda? Okay, Linda, come on up.
We're backing you up.
Yeah, oh, thanks. You're backing me up.
You need to gavel like.
Did you?
Linda, do you want me to share screen, show the pictures?
Oh,
He got him, yeah.
okay,
I've got your proposal in the packet.
the ARPA committee has voted to recommend this, but ultimately that's just a recommendation. It is ultimately to us to approve or reject. So go ahead.
Okay, we have been to the ARPA committee twice to explain our request. And it is basically for us to put a fence around the village cemetery, a complete fence with a gate. And we have a survey that shows exactly where it should be. And our plan right now is a 4-foot high fence with a gate to be installed on 4 sides of the village cemetery. Which would go between Jolena Court's property and the library. That's a version of the survey. So we know exactly where it's supposed to be. When the Jolena Court property was being developed, we asked for a fence that would go down that side of the building. Between Jolena and the cemetery. And at first we thought we were going to get it, but then the DRB said, no, we're not going to make you put that in. Since they have moved into the building, we've had issues with the people from the Creamery Apartments using the cemetery for recreational use.
Barbecues and such.
They've had tables and all that set up there. And when I contacted the owner, they didn't know it was a cemetery. And we had pictures, and I, sometimes I speak out. I said, you could put your coffee cup on that man's tombstone, it's that close. We did get them to move the tables and chairs, and here's a picture, and it's in that one there.
If you right click, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, well, there's the hammock that's there. We have not been successful in getting that moved.
I'll get it. I'll take it.
Yeah, go up there with some scissors.
Vigilante.
We feel it's important to close in the cemetery because we've had a lot of vandalism up there. We've had some stones fixed in the front row, and whoever is kicking them over. And we had 2 gentlemen that repair stones saying those didn't fall over just because the snow or anything. He could tell that they'd been kicked. We think it's important to provide a respectful and protected final resting place for many of our citizens. And we have been informed that there's probably about 9 what they're calling patriots that were in the Civil War that protected, the Richmond area and the whole state of Vermont. And they're all buried right here. We also have an Indian princess buried in there. And a lot of early settlers. We did find out that the town used to bury the indigent people and anybody passing through that died around that cemetery. We did ask for that fence, and when they were digging to put in that big building, they did uncover a casket, but they deny it. I have a very reputable citizen that saw the whole thing and tried to stop them, and they wouldn't stop, and anyways, they covered it back up and will not admit they did that. And a properly installed fence would stop other vandalism. There would be a gate, which right now we think will be on the cemetery side, not the front towards Bridge Street. Just because of the lay of the land, so that they can get up in there to mow,
Okay,
because otherwise we already have curbings there on the front.
okay.
And if in the future sometime a sidewalk is installed down Bridge Street on that side, a fence would deter people from cutting through the cemetery. And we hope that they would put some sort of a retaining wall there to keep the dirt back. In your packet, we had pictures of what it looks like now, as everybody knows, and a picture of what it's gonna look like after the project. The only thing we don't have in there along the Bridge Street side, we'll be having these little rings installed
On the top
and
part.
along the top, in between those two top rows of pipe. And I've seen it at Effie Hart's and it's quite attractive.
More decorative.
Yeah, very decorative.
Oh, okay, I get it. Yep.
Yeah. But that's just gonna be on that front section, like where the
Josh has a
arrow is.
Is there a picture in the packet?
No, not of the ring. But that's where the rings are
I
gonna
was just
go.
circling like.
It'll have a nice decorative top.
Right.
You see.
Oh, sorry, there is a picture.
Yeah.
My apologies. Yes, there is.
There you go. That's what
Gonna
they're gonna
fix
look
that.
like.
Let me see.
We already have a proposal for the fencing from Effie Hart of Williston for $27,829. We consulted Middlebury Fence and Fences of Fairfax, and they did not get back to us at all. We have a proposal for installing the fence and the cement work from White's Fencing in Heinsberg for $10,177.50. And then the stones in the cemetery are in dire need of restoration and repair. We have an estimate of $6,700 from James Woodman. He's done a lot of cleaning in the other cemeteries in Richmond, and we're extremely happy with his work. It's very precise and detailed and specialized. And there's very, very few people that will do that. Some will clean, but they won't fix. We had another vendor come out and look, but they never got back to us either. And we're proposing that the cemetery commission covers 50% of the project, and ARPA funds be used to match the 50% of the other 50%, which will calculate to $22,353.25. We do have some folks from the Old Vermont Cemetery Association, which will be here in June, and they're going to be resetting some of the stones because most of those old stones don't have foundations, and that's their problem.
Mhm.
So we will be buying stone dust to do that with, and Pete Gosselin said he'd go pick it up for us. In the past, the Cemetery Association has paid to take out 3 very large trees that were damaged along Bridge Street. ARPA committee asked that we contact the tree warden, that's Matt Leonetti, and I've left messages for him. I haven't heard back from him yet. They wanted to be sure that the trees that are between the library and the fence are viable and wouldn't be coming down on the new fence. Has anybody got any other questions?
Lisa?
Yeah,
Hello, Art.
people,
I'm doing okay. Doing okay.
knowledge of the front of that cemetery, where the graves are?
That we're working on.
They're working on that because
Sorry,
of
when-
wanting the sidewalk.
Okay.
So the town's working on
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was already, but, how do they look for those? You just-
Ground sensing radar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, how far down does that go?
Oh, I don't know. I was,
It's,
I was just-
it's used in a lot of places
Yeah.
for this exact purpose.
yeah. And I was just watching a program on TV where they had, in Florida, they paved over this, they have this huge parking lot, I mean, huge. And then somebody decided that there were bodies under it. And they went with the sonar thing and they found all these bodies lined right up, but they're
Right.
under the cement.
Even more amusingly, in England,
Mhm.
there was a theory as far as where King Richard III, the guy with the hunchback, had been killed in battle and where his probable gravesite was. And there'd always been this debate over, was he really hunchbacked?
He was
He was. They found him with this kind of radar
in a park.
in a parking lot.
You'd be so funny.
So we are hoping that the select board will approve the request to the ARPA committee to pay that 50% of the project.
And to add, the ARPA committee has discussed this and we have voted to endorse this. Are there any further questions from members of the select board? Lisa?
Sure. What happens if, it's like one outlier grave or whatever, and be a lot cheaper fence to just dig that up and put it back in?
We don't know yet. We
Okay.
gotta wait and see what that sonar company says, of
Okay, is the
what's
con
where.
likely to change because of what they may find?
It might, yeah. And then we're gonna cover the cost of the stone dust.
And then we'll all have a big picnic.
There you
And
go.
this thing that we did- I will just,
With the
yeah,
hammock.
I will just say
Where's
that
the hammock?
saying we did not know that was a cemetery is possibly the stupidest thing
Yes. I
that's
agree.
ever been quoted in this room. And this used to be a
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
So that's saying something.
And the gate, right, and the gate is gonna be wide enough, it's a commercial gate, so that you can get the big lawnmowers up in there.
So we just really feel that this would solve
A lot of,
potential issues.
Yeah.
and pay a lot of respect to the
People that are.
Somehow I think
former
Plaintiff
people.
Court's gonna be coming back to us sometime for.
Yeah.
Well, they may be. Anyhow,
From the funding and the vote. and
Yes.
Where we go, I just personally think it's reprehensible that people are desecrating the cemetery
Yeah.
like that.
and I've seen people walking their dogs over there, yeah.
so do we have a motion? There's a motion in your packet.
Actually, if I can find it.
The
Yes,
next
I
one,
do.
there's
I've
a
got
bunch
it.
of
I
them.
move to approve the use of
You wanna-
$22,353.25 in ARPA funds for a fence and repair of the headstones at the village cemetery.
This is David. I will second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. For those of you watching at home, we have more ARPA items to come up later, but our engineers, our architects rather, are here. So thank you, Cemetery Commission. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jeff, if you want
Thank
to introduce this next item,
Sure.
this will be going back to item D on your agenda.
I'd like to welcome Andrew McCullough and John Hemmelgarn, they're from Black River Design. They are the architects that we have hired to help us with the design for the town center committee. Before we have them present, and we'll have them present some pretty pictures and answer questions. I'd like to give a little bit of background as to how we got to this point. The town center and library committee has been working pretty diligently, like twice a month for 4 years, over 4 years. And over that time, I think we've accomplished a great deal. This came about because this floor was vacated by the school district when they moved their offices over to Underhill. And so the town was trying to figure out, well, what do we do with this space? It's in our building. So one of the first things we did is we interviewed all of the town staff in the space to try to figure out how it was used. We set up a priority list of how we would like to see this building used, and that included town services first. The post office was a really valuable tenant, and arguably, while it's a government service, it's not a town service, but it is a government service, and we thought that they were very valuable as well. Beyond that, we established that the Historical Society and the Senior Center were terrific tenants for this building. and they use very little space. So we wanted to include them as this kind of a second tier. And then for a third tier, we have tenants, paying tenants. We have 2 paying tenants. We have the MMCTV that records our meetings. And we have the Radiate Art Space, which is in the basement. We did a whole bunch of visioning. Christine Wernicke, when she was chair of this committee, was very intent on trying to get as much public input as possible. And we held many public meetings to try to get input on what the community would like to see this building used for. A question that came up over and over was what's the difference of building new versus rehabilitating this building? And what we determined is that if we could find a site, which is not a given, if we could find another site in Richmond for a town center building, a town hall building, it would cost several $1 million more to build new than it would be to reuse this building, and be very difficult to find, if not impossible, to find a site that was as well suited as this site. And seeing as it not only is called the town center, it is the town center. We determined, we investigated whether we could, and if so, how could we use this building, because a portion of it is in the floodplain. And what we determined was that yes, it can be used, but we have to take the floodplain into consideration, which means that we have to flood proof it. Meaning there are 2 different ways to do that. One is to seal it all off so that no water goes in, which is very expensive and be very intrusive on the outside of the building. Or we could open it up and let the floodwaters come in and go out without damaging the rest of the building. What that means is that the basement level cannot be used for occupied space. So that eliminates where the Radiate Art Space is now. Can be used for storage, but it can't be used for occupied space. What we found once we hired architects, we found that when you go around and interview all of the occupants of the building and you construct your wish list, this probably happens frequently, where everybody's wish list is a little bit bigger than what their stomach is. By a fair margin. When we put all down on paper, all of the wishes and needs of the police department, it was driving us towards the whole project towards designing around the police department. And we didn't feel like the town center committee was the right committee to think about what our future police needs were. The operable piece of that was really difficult for us to try to figure out was the police department wanted what's called a Sally port, the detainee processing facility where you take a prisoner and you take them out of a car into a secure place, and then you process them for transport to jail. That requires being able to drive a car in. You notice the first floor of this building is half-story up. And so the connection between that is really difficult. And the only way to do that would be to put either a substantial addition onto this building or to build another building on this site, which has a whole host of problems. And what the committee determined is we can improve the police space greatly. We can even double its existing space. But planning for having a garage of some sort connected to this building was beyond our scope and beyond our needs. We haven't processed prisoners in this building for several years. What we do is we outsource that to Williston and or Tynesburg. So we felt that we could continue to do that. And by doing that, we could focus on this building. How do we get our needs and wants as best we can into this space? And I think that brings us up to today, so what we wanted to do today is to present to you what our current thinking is, and this is pretty new. I mean, we came up with this, last month? It was in last month's meeting. And we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We wanted to get to a point where we could present something coherent to you, not as a final design and not as, a final approval, but to provide you with where we stand right now, answer your questions, and we have a few questions for you. So
Okay.
is that a fair characterization, do you think?
That was, I don't know, Jeff, why you have us here. No, that was good. Again, I'm John Hemmelgarn. I guess the one piece that we discovered that you didn't mention perhaps is that the zoning requirements here also constrain the site significantly. There's a maximum amount of lot coverage you can have with essentially building or other impervious surface. The current site for the town hall exceeds what's allowed by your own zoning regulations. Therefore, it would be grandfathered and we can maintain the existing lot coverage, but we cannot increase it.
Right, state of the footprint.
Yes. And again, there are some cases where we can move pavement from here to there if we and add pavement somewhere else. But in the end, the percentage of coverage cannot increase. And so when we were looking at putting additional structure on the site or providing additional parking, those are all working contrary to the lot coverage issue. I'll also just mention is we're not prepared to say how much any of this costs, but no addition on the site costs less than addition on the site. So I think really by maintaining the existing footprint, we're really keeping the cost down to a minimum, because there's going to be certain improvements to this building that are going to be made whether you add on to it or just renovate it. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew and let him describe what we got going today.
So we're currently looking at a site plan with both the library on the left and town hall building on the right. Conceptually, one of the initial things that our landscape architects and us found kind of working through this process, that the initial parking layout is extremely inefficient. And as you can see in the top left, there's kind of a generic summary of parking space counts, lot development percentages. And this current layout has matched the existing parking layout, parking number, reduced slightly the lot coverage, and ultimately provided a larger, if you zoom back out, public area that sits between the library and the town hall, more green space, more welcoming to the public. It has moved a stronger pedestrian access that connects the library to the town hall. Initially, we're showing some sort of speed table that would help slow traffic down, make that connection a little bit more safe and welcoming. One of the initial things that the landscape architects focused on was helping to improve that connection. Similarly, they're improving the ADA access to the library, which certainly isn't the most efficient currently. You will notice there is a new sidewalk heading to the south of the existing town hall building, wrapping the corner. What we are showing right now is a new stairwell that's being built in to the empty space between the existing vault and the back side of the post office. That currently there's you can see the kind of light gray dashed line of where the fire escape currently is. It's really not a suitable second means of egress. So that is actually a new increase to the footprint, which we are addressing through other means as far as reducing impervious material elsewhere. So all that has been accounted for as part of the percentages that you're seeing on Wagner Hodgson's notes in the top left corner. This site plan does conceptually take into account floodplain issues. We've had some initial discussions and are prepared to kind of take this to the next level and properly address compensatory storage for anything that's built within the floodplain. But I think in general, it's the beauty of simplicity and helping to improve that Main Street access for the public.
You'll also notice in the top corner there, the little blue triangle, which is it's an allowance of space on the site for stormwater treatment,
Mhm.
which we can't forget. And we can start incorporating that in the plans,
Right, you got an impermeable surface, you need one of those.
something there as well. We're maintaining the access to the neighboring parcel at the top of the page there. And we are also just very minimally increasing the block coverage on the library lot. There's two separate parcels here. The good news is that the lot coverage at the library is under the allowable amount.
Mhm.
And so us increasing that, I think it was from 29 to 33% is still well within what's allowed. We are maintaining the lawn behind the library, including, I think, a couple of important plantings that are back there currently.
So I think what I can say excited the committee about this proposal is a lot more trees. Of which was exciting, and a lot more green space. The connection between the town center building and the library as a pedestrian access, as opposed to kids walking across the parking lot, was really well received. We have two library trustees on our committee, Amy Wardwell and Lori Dana. They took this back to the library trustees and they were extremely supportive. The hope for that event space there is that would be helpful for programming space for the library, make it much safer to go in between the two buildings.
One note of reference, this graphic doesn't necessarily show this. This current graphic doesn't show this as clearly, but if you were to draw a line that's extending from the west wall of the original town hall building towards the library, that's more or less where the existing parking lot extends to, just as a reference point of how much we're pulling back pavement away. Yeah, that's more or less where the existing parking lot extends to. So we're recapturing quite a bit of green space.
So we'd have to remove or relocate the charging station.
It's true. And I think that I would hope that when we get to that point, that we talk about more charging stations and maybe connecting them to the town hall building as opposed to the library.
Okay,
We're also relocating the handicap accessible parking spaces that currently require those folks to back out onto the road.
okay.
Where are they going to? Can you just point them out?
They're gonna be right.
One or two right there,
Yeah, two right there and two over by the post office.
and the ramp to get into it's gonna be right there.
Yeah,
Sidewalk there.
the sidewalk slopes up from that spot there. It slopes up towards the building. And then as you make that turn, right where it says 75%. There, there's either, up 4 or 5 steps, or you take the ramp to the right and then it curls back around. We tried very hard to not have any steps there and have everyone use the ramp, but we ran out of real estate.
Okay,
Did I hear you say the Bridge Street side or facade of the building would be the main entrance? Did you say that?
No.
Okay, what,
Of you're talking about town hall or library?
I'm sorry, town hall.
Town hall, no, I think the entrance would stay where it is, certainly. Well, we really haven't discussed that.
I've
That's a
wondered-
really good question, because what's going to happen is with the addition of the sidewalks that you're currently been putting in, and since we started work on this project, one of the goals of this project was to create a better connection between the village and this building and make it a more walkable district. And once this is a walkable district and people are walking from places up the hill or across the bridge, then that sidewalk from the sidewalk along the road to the building could become easily
It's not used very much right now.
right.
Right, it's not
it
practical.
could be
to make
more,
the right
about
lines
more pedestrian traffic.
Okay,
in town.
Barb,
I was tempted to ask if that's a cemetery next to the library, but I will resist that impulse based on our previous conversation. I really like how you've approached a bunch of these things, because I've thought for several decades that the pedestrian and traffic flow in this area needed a solution, and it seems to me like this is it. My one, and we already talked about the charging station. My remaining question is about the stormwater ponding, pooling at the far end. Does that presumably need some sort of drain to go somewhere?
There is one currently and it heads over towards the east. There's a low spot kind of into those trees.
Do we know where it goes?
Kevin, our civil engineer hunted through those trees when we were here a few months ago and found it. I think.
So that's my only question. We've run into circumstances where historical stormwater drainage and pipes and distribution was perhaps less than ideal. So it's just a question to make sure that we bring that into the 21st century in whatever fashion necessary.
Yes, and so you bring up a great point in that, you know, we've gotten to a certain level of design here where we've made, I think, reasonable assumptions. And we don't want to go too much further till we are all on the same page here. And the next step would be to verify some of that stuff and to put a more definitive cost estimate together for you.
On the note of, you know, the question about the entrance into the building, maybe we should roll over to the second graphic that actually shows our conceptually the layout of the town hall building, just so we understand what's happening inside that building.
So we're still happy to entertain additional questions on the site as we go forward.
We haven't.
But this will, I think this will, what Andrew suggests, will give a
letting
more
this go.
complete vision.
Are you
of
sharing over
our
there?
Project.
No.
It's over here.
This
Okay.
one's 101.
I just
Oh,
want
we need to open a second. The document he has up, this is the only page. If you look at the top, it says 101.
It's a separate file.
Separate file,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, of course it is. There it is. There we
Okay.
go.
That's the one.
Okay, sorry.
So
Go
Josh,
off
I just
of
want to call out the fact that you're losing your view.
Of a fire escape.
Well, my office is gonna change.
She'll move. Yeah.
So. let's
Wait,
not-
we need to zoom in.
Let's not worry about my view just yet.
Okay, so can we zoom in on one floor or the other?
Where do you want to start here?
Sally Port.
You want to, let's get on the floor on the left. Yeah, zoom in on that.
Well, actually, let's start. So the plan on the right is the ground level plan, which includes the half story up. So the post office is in yellow. The green, post office is in yellow. The historic building is down page of the yellow graphic. That's the half story up. So you come in, there are those double doors in the top left corner. I don't know if Josh is pointing.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
You're right, you're okay here.
yeah, so that's the current entrance. You come up those stairwell, right at those double doors. That's where the old safe is. You come up the stairs to the half story up. So as Jeff kind of described, you know, we went through a lot of iterations in terms of just presenting all the possible options of where a program can go, how to break it out. And where we came to was his priority list, the town offices being at the top, post office second, historical and senior center third, and it's last.
Okay, so on the left, for those of you who can't see it very well at home, the town manager's office is basically shifting sides of the building from where it currently is to there. So he would be looking out the library. The assistant manager would be next to him. The business admin would be north of that, and we've got a couple closets there. A couple toilets right next to town manager's office. And then directly below that, we have a new select board meeting room, so you won't have to come all the way up here. On the other side in the lower corner, we have the town clerk and listers. Above that, we have the conference room for access to land records. Then we have the vault there to the right. Zoning would have the space up north of that with an office and a workroom. So it's kind of flipping things around a little bit. And then you want to go over to the other floor?
So, you know, one of the things that the committee was excited about and this is a high priority, is to try to keep the town services on one floor rather than split them up. I think it's fair to say that these interior partition walls they could all change.
Mhm.
You know, that's not, in the grand scheme of things, a wall here or a wall there won't make a huge difference.
Right.
But it took us quite a while to get to, living within this footprint.
Mhm.
And trying to fit everything within this footprint. And so that's really one of the big things that we wanted to bring to the select board was, can we
Okay.
do this?
Okay, so we got about 8 minutes left on this topic, so this
Okay.
is where the floor we're currently on, right?
Taking questions later, please.
Well, we need to leave some room for that, so let's finish up, yep. So this is the floor we're currently on, right?
Yep, police station,
The police station is coming upstairs.
exactly. It's
Okay.
adding about, it's about doubling square footage, taking up this entire half of the building, the northern half of the historic building. And then MMC TV, Historical Society Senior Center, and a common break room that serves the entire building. With a small conference room in the old principal's office.
I apologize, which is MMC TV?
Tenant.
Right
that-
there.
The big orange- the biggest orange block, right? Mhm. And the break room is, okay. This looks good.
The room for the police department, is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And these represent the actual colors of the rooms. We're actually going to paint them that color.
Yes, if you
Okay.
wish.
So
All
question,
6 sides. Yeah, how constrained are you by the existing structure of the building? Pretty constrained, it looks like. I mean, there's not a lot of changes possible. I assume, that costs money too, so. Unless you needed to.
we can't expand the footprint because of the zoning. So we can move the alignment a little bit, but
Right, so,
Things like these walls will be different.
The interior walls?
Yes.
Yeah, they're non-load bearing, I assume.
right, but again, so the space on the right, the orange and purple there, plus the center bay with the stair in it and that small conference room,
That's
that
a-
was the original building.
That's a given.
And so then
Ah,
where the
okay.
police station is shown on this plan is an addition,
Mhm.
a very old addition. But again, so that has its own structure. So you're not really going to want to take out any of those exterior walls.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's again, these were classrooms up here. There were some walls that perhaps have some structural
mhm.
capacity, but it's nothing that we can't pretty easily work around. It's a pretty flexible program otherwise, so.
Mhm.
And again, the fewer changes we make to those types of things,
Yeah.
the more cost effective
That's
it
right.
is, so. Try to make this affordable.
Mhm.
Mary,
Yeah, I have a question, please. Jeff, you said that the walls can easily change and it's not a big deal. What about the trees? What kind of understructure? I mean, I understand that, the landscape architect cost about 15,000 and it's always money for me. What kind of trees are you proposing? Where do I find this information? And if you don't have the understory to support those trees, you might as well not plant a tree. And you know what I'm talking about, the understructure that supports the root system. Currently, the tree that's out there now in the island behind the mail slot, the postal drop as you drive around is dying because it doesn't have enough underspace. And I'm concerned that when this building was built and when there have been modifications to the parking lot, that all you will find is probably 12, 18, 20 inches of asphalt or concrete. So what kind of, where can I find more information about that?
So we're not there yet, Mary. So this
Well,
is
why are the trees on there then?
because we needed to bring a conceptual design to the select board to get approval to move forward with doing more final design.
but that said, Mary does make a good point. A lot of us have seen where somebody complies with green space regulations by putting a tree in the middle of a traffic island and it dies and you've got a stump. So that is definitely something that as we move forward on the project, we will need to make sure that we don't go down 2 feet and have an impermeable surface and then the tree dies.
Right, so we need to plan for that now as we put together a budget for this, that there's enough scope of work planned in the ground
Mhm.
to support the growth of the trees. And then the careful consideration needs to be made of the species that go in and how big they are when they go in, so that they're not too big and they're not too small.
Right.
Well, trees aren't like you change your shirt, you put it in to be a permanent, and I'm not trying to be fresh or anything like that. I'm a master gardener, which doesn't mean anything to a landscape architect, but I'm also a stewardship of the urban landscape. I was on the governor's council for 9 years. And we had pretty intense meetings about trees throughout the state. But, has the landscape, you hired the landscape architect, right, Jeff? I mean, if you said this is not the final
They were
concept.
part of our
where is it?
team.
Well, okay, Mary-
This is a process
Right.
that takes quite a bit of
Yes,
time.
I know, but when Jeff came in and asked for 15,000 for the landscape, I want to know like what has happened so far. And please don't think this is an unfair question.
Well,
Well,
Mary, it's just that right now what we're looking for is to say, yes, the design of the building looks good, and yes, we should have trees. But there is not yet a plan that says where that tree goes in, it will be a chestnut and it will have 16 feet of dirt directly under it. That we're not at that part of the process yet, but your point is very good. At some point, before it's the point of no return, we do need to have that discussed.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question regarding the building plans. This is Officer Allison Dangler, Richmond PD.
I'm
Can you hear
sorry.
me all right, gents?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah.
Hey, so appreciate the designs. They look great. However, I do have one concern because you still only have one locker room. However, I love the upgrade to actually having the bathroom in a secured area for the officers. What changes can be made so that your locker room actually offers privacy to both sexes and non-binary, depending on whether or not Richmond does employ an individual that identifies as that?
Again, this is a preliminary plan, and that type of input is, I think, certainly welcome as we move forwards. There is a finite amount of space, and so there'll be a prioritization process that goes through of making sure that we've got everything that we need in there, and configuring it in such a way that it optimizes.
Right,
the
but there's
usefulness
also
of the
state
building.
law about, the mandatory access for locker rooms for police officers. Certain amount of footage that we can't really go below. And it's something that might seem like, well, it's a nice thing to have to some people, but for people who need it, it's not a nice thing to have, it's necessary. Karen, you had a question.
Just a couple of things. I agree with the whole tree thing. It's lovely to have a lot of them, but I don't even think we have a list of our current tree quote maintenance and upkeep and upgrade and which ones are being removed and replanted. So I really want to really push us to maybe cut back a little bit there and be a little bit more cautious with that until we have a plan for all the other existing trees in town before we start adding a large inventory. And that's a pretty big inventory for this parcel. But my point more so is it just seems like, and I'm going to be blunt with you because that's how I roll. We're just moving some rooms around a lot, and we're moving some bathrooms around a lot, and we're kind of doing what we've already got here, just in a different layout. And I thought at one point the reason for really looking at this was partially because our police department, because we were looking at doing a complete different building somewhere else that had fire, police, and I don't know, rescue in it or something like that. Way back when we were looking at a $10 million building. So now we're looking at just rearranging what's inside this building. And I'm just concerned that we're just relocating things. And that at one point, the police did not want to go through the elevator with having a potential detainee with them. So now we're saying we're not going to have any detainees processed here, which they had that room and to come up the stairs, and that was an issue, so it needed to be enlarged. And so that was a huge percentage of why that was happening, and that was a lot of money. But now to exit off the whole thing and just give them some offices upstairs, it's like, what?
Okay, we're at time on this issue, but I want to make sure that the select board, if they have any more questions, is there any more questions? Bard, Lisa, Jeff, Jay, David?
So one of our purposes of coming here is we hope to work towards a bond vote in November. In order to do that, we need direction from the select board that the direction that we're going is the correct direction.
Okay.
The architects have said, it gave us what? 10 different options or
14.
something of what we could possibly do on this site. And it ranged from adding a 4,000 square foot building between these two buildings.
So do you need a motion from us tonight?
It's more a direction of the sense of the board Is this okay for us to proceed
Okay,
along
so,
these lines?
so we are over time for this issue. Quick question. Does anybody on the select board have any objections to this overall concept as presented?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
Somebody had mentioned that to address the floodplain, we're making the bottom story, partially the basement, just open. Is there a rendering of that of some sort, or do we lose any space? Does that space have to be recreated somewhere else? I know we're storing there for the most part, but what does that do to our utilization?
I think it's just gonna be storage of stuff that won't be overly hurt if it floods.
So right now, there's probably, you know, it's mostly storage now for our community cares and the recreation department. They would literally-
Soccer and
Baseball, yeah.
So it's, you know, it's a bunch of stuff. You know, it's not like, you know, you wouldn't put historic documents down there.
Okay.
Yeah, not
So
anymore.
what the floodplain regulations require us to do is to take out everything that could rot.
Mhm.
That means wood, sheetrock, plaster, and all of that. We can't have metal shelving. And we can store stuff out there.
Okay,
So that's what the current plan is.
so those logistics,
So it's still the basement essentially, and
Yes.
is it open or is it enclosed as it is now?
There's a couple classrooms down there with, that Radiate uses.
okay. So this is not final decision on the plan. This is a sense of the select board. Does anybody, Bard, you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly, you know, I assume that town staff, including the police department, planning, zoning, et cetera, or those folks have been in the loop and there's not fatal flaw from any of those future users of the building?
No, they
I
have,
Have
they
been.
have been in these discussion.
Okay. Anything else, Bard?
One asked
Kara.
above the post
Kara.
office. Was a second floor proposed?
Kara, stop. This is not going to go on all night. Otherwise it could, but we've made a decision as a select board to try to move things along. This is not final discussion of this plan. Question is, right now, is there any sense from the select board that you have any objections to this plan, or can we essentially say, without necessarily a motion, but is there anybody on the select board who says, no, I don't like this plan, it should be redone in some fashion? Otherwise, are we okay with this plan at this point? Okay, I'm seeing people nodding. I want to thank you guys for coming. Jeff, I want to thank you for the presentation,
Thank you for your time.
and we will look at this in the future.
I'd like to just think out loud for a second.
Okay.
It seems like we're doing the minimal change to
As
what
a-
we have here.
As opposed to a maximal change.
Oh, yeah, well, we could go. Yeah, I mean, cost is going to be minimized by doing that too. So
Okay,
I think that's a good thing. It's a good direction.
okay,
There might be, it might be worth them sticking around for the
next item.
next item.
Okay, this is probably a quick one. This is on the agenda is like 5 minutes. Item E on your agenda is consideration of approval of town center funds to pay for energy modeling of the town center renovation project. As the memo says, the town center committee would like to conduct energy modeling of the town center to look at the base design, stretch code design option, potential for a net zero building. Dubois and King have been working with the project architects Black River Design on similar work and can add this scope of work for $10,700. Black River Design requires a 33% fee for their services relating to this work, bringing the total to $14,200. This committee is requesting that the select board approve this as an expenditure for the town center fund. Town center fund has an end of FY23 projected balance of $207,000. A draft motion is in your packet asking us to approve $14,200 from the town center fund to pay for energy modeling of the town center. Are there questions? Is there a motion? Lisa,
Just a
go ahead.
question. I assume insulation and windows and so forth are going to be upgraded or replaced or whatever.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so
based on this audit or before the audit and the audit audits?
So there has been, a number of projects to upgrade the weatherization of the building over the last 10, 15 years. Both in the ceiling and in the walls.
Mhm.
The windows are original. Okay, so this was, the building was built in 1907. There are exterior storm windows that no longer function very well. And
There's some
so
big improvements
certainly,
there.
no matter what we do, we will need to replace the windows
Mhm.
and we'll need to upgrade the heating and ventilating system.
Right, with the overall goal of making this a net zero building, which allows a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
Right, and so in order to do that, the engineers need to model the building
Mhm.
as it is and model it with what is the least you can do and meet the code. And we're asking them to, what would it take to get it further?
Okay, so the model will be essentially the existing building as is, and the improvements that are specified will just be kind of dialed into that model.
Yes, what we hope to get out of that is both something that that we can estimate, so we can estimate what the difference in costs are of going from the least you can do to meet the code. And, you know, up to
Find the minimum
perhaps
cost.
including getting it to a net zero standard.
Cool. I highly recommend it. Any other comments or suggestions? Okay, do we have a motion?
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the use of $14,200 from the town center fund to pay for energy modeling of the town center.
Okay, David, David made that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve the use of $14,200 from the town center fund to pay for energy modeling of the town center. Any further discussion? Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay,
Bart.
aye.
Bart,
Oh, and Bart, I did it again. Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you so much. I think we are now done with Black River.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, our next agenda item, we have already taken care of. It was the ARPA request from the Cemetery Commission. We're going to skip forward to item G.
No, there's more.
There's more from we have other ARPA stuff, yes, to be sure, but that
Oh,
was,
sorry. Oh, you're right.
so our next item is item G, which is on page 10 of the memo. Consideration of the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds. So a brief compressed synopsis. We have approved some money, the cemetery, money for the Bruin grant, money to pay for the amount of money spent to conduct the surveys. There is a document which is in your packet that is called the ARPA project list. If Josh would like to bring that up. This is quick. That one, yep. Okay, so this, can we make it bigger?
Colors changed.
Colors changed. Okay, so the green items on here, $150,000 for the Bruin grant for the library exterior, $3,000 to pay for last summer's survey. Blue are ones that the ARPA committee has given a thumbs up to and formally voted to forward onto the committee. Yellow is something that has been discussed, but the dollar amount for it is very nebulous because we have a request from the Recreation Committee, but we have not had the public input necessary to say, is this actually a good idea? And before we begin dynamiting volunteers green, we should probably ask the public what they want dynamited. So we're not coming to you tonight to ask about the Recreation Committee monies. We have two purple items at the bottom, one for the digitizing of town records of various kinds, and one that is miscellaneous money for the town center, which might be used to put solar on top of this thing, but that's not what we're coming to you tonight about either. We're coming to you tonight about the purple things, the blue things. We have two, this is in the memo, but I'll sum it up. We have two sidewalk projects. One of them is a sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to US 2, which would include an uphill bike lane and improvements to the pedestrian walkway here at the market, which, as you guys know, is kind of a nightmare when we don't have those barricades there. We also have a second sidewalk related item to put sidewalks, and I believe this should actually be the west side of Bridge Street, despite what your memo says, from Jelena Court to Esplanade. In addition to that, there is an item there you'll see for municipal oversight. The reason we have municipal oversight item is because the money that we have for the actual sidewalk projects does not include the municipal project oversight that is necessary. And so we have a total of 3 items relating to sidewalk projects. It's important to note that the third one down, Bridge Street East Sidewalk, which has matching for TAP grant listed there, we had already previously authorized the town to apply for the TAP grant. And this is an item further down on the agenda. And we did get the grant, we did approve it. We have a motion a little later on to approve and sign the grant agreement. But the important thing to remember from this is you'll see that the matching for TAP grant says $64,000. This is a 20% match. The remaining money would have been $256,000. So this is a wonderful opportunity for the town to leverage ARPA money. And that was one of our biggest criteria as a committee, was things that would have long life, benefit the town, improve safety various ways, and were possible leverage matching money. So we've already taken care of, as I said, the cemetery item. So the three remaining items we're asking for approval from the select board tonight are to approve using $254,509. This is bottom of page 10 and ARPA funds for the Complete Streets project, which again is sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to Route 2 and a bike lane and the market at the walkway at the market. The municipal oversight, I've already mentioned, and then again, the $64,000 is the match for the TAP grant for the sidewalk on the other side of the street. So we're asking, we have two motions on page 10, but before we start making motions, I'm sure you have questions, so go ahead.
So really, the 254,000 is the sidewalk project and some other stuff. Okay.
Well, the 250, yeah, right.
Okay.
So you might want to put up the project criteria list.
Sure. You have it there. It's on the website.
It's on the website. It's on under our.
Yeah, if you go to the ARPA page on the website, there's a link to it.
Top of the website. So one of the processes that the ARPA committee did, I actually think the ARPA committee has done really good work. We did quite a bit of public engagement to get ideas. We sorted those ideas into broad categories. And then we developed a project criteria, this project criteria list, which is something I think, Bard, you've asked for in the past. And we looked at these projects relative to this criteria. It's not a weighted criteria because I think everybody might have different weight them in different ways. But I think if you look through this criteria list, it seems to make a fair amount of common sense. And it appeared to the committee that the projects that are being proposed fit this criteria, most of these criteria quite well.
In addition to what Jeff has said, there was another item I think should be mentioned. When we did the survey of town residents and we received literally hundreds of suggestions, and we consolidated them into, like, if 20 people said, I want more sidewalks, but they use different spelling, we can combine them. Pedestrian safety, improvements to safety were one of the top two items, the other being general recreation. The town very much wants to make our downtown more walkable, more safe. And so this would kind of fall under the heading of the second bullet point from the bottom, increase public safety. You could also say it increases public wellness by people not getting hit by cars. And it is something that would have a long lasting effect. It would not really hit the future cost savings or future revenue unless we charge people to use the sidewalks, but it would be the next bullet point, widely shared and accessible to all residents in an equitable manner. And I think the equity point is something that should also be called out because right now our downtown is wonderful for fully able people who are able to walk well. It is not open to those who cannot. And this would make significant improvements to that. So Bard, Lisa, any questions while Dave's out of the room?
I'll tell you what, where we're headed, I think is a good place. I mean, there's costs that maybe we argue or disagree with, but overall, I think I can see the piece. I mean, the sidewalk on the west side is wonderful. People walking are just smiling. They don't even have to watch where they're going. It's
Right.
It's smooth, straight. Yeah.
And on that subject, one of the reasons for sidewalks on both sides, Morgan Woolover made this point a while back where he's walking from his house on Tilton Avenue trying to get to the town center. But if he walks directly from the Catholic Church side to the Cumberland Farms and then tries to continue down to like Bridge Street Hare, he's getting clobbered potentially as he comes across the parking lot. If he could do that entire walk by crossing to the corner where Green Sea Systems is, and there is a continuous sidewalk all the way down, much safer, fewer crossings. And we want to try to minimize the excess crossings. It's sometimes people who want to get where they're going and don't want to cross may take risks by just walking down the side of the road.
Well, there's another thing too. Individual parking at businesses is limited. They have what they have. And if they're more popular than they expected, people park down, Volunteers Green, they park wherever they can. And then they're walking to Big Spruce or they're walking to something on Bridge Street, it's great. Let's encourage that. So let's let them get there alive and, Yeah, so I think it's
Okay,
very good.
The
Thanks,
one
Pam.
final point that I would say is that, the sidewalks have been a hot topic in town for, before ARPA and through ARPA and after ARPA. The sidewalks have received a lot of discussion, public discussion through the Transportation Committee, through the planning grants that we've had to get, that we've had to approve at the select board level. There's been a lot of public discussion about it. Not everybody agrees, I mean, not everybody's gonna agree on anything. But I feel that we've gotten a lot of public support for improving the sidewalks on the east side of Bridge.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say the appearance alone, just driving through town it's just wonderful. I remember what was there. It's
right.
not quite bombed out.
And to Jeff's point, one other thing that should be mentioned, because people might be watching this and going, but hey, wait, I objected. The biggest single reason for objection, which we may remember from town meeting, was the cemetery. And we have, I think it just goes without
I think
saying
it's
that
getting
if the
solved.
ground safety radar finds archaeological remains or human remains within the belt along the cemetery where we are proposing to put a sidewalk and a grass strip, we will not be covering bodies with the sidewalk. If it turns out that we literally, there's no way to put a sidewalk there without covering things like that over, then I guess we won't have a sidewalk on that block. But we need to find out. But I think we've all heard loud and clear. People don't want to see bodies getting paved over, so we will do due diligence.
Do water lines go up that side of the road?
Think
Stormwater.
other side,
Okay, so
stormwater diagonally.
okay, so the west side is water.
Jolena Court cut across Bridge Street when they.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that has to cross over somewhere.
Okay, Bard.
I'm just curious.
I think the description and discussion here has been sound. The one thing I'll say, or two other things. I think people are often daunted by the linear foot cost of sidewalks. They are not cheap. That said, I will say Pete's proposal several years ago now to increase staffing so we could do some projects ourselves versus contracting it all out, I think is proving to be prudent in terms of both getting projects done and at a more reasonable cost, perhaps.
Not only that, the workers are getting a lot of thumbs up just from people.
Great
going
work.
by. Yeah.
Yeah, we're lucky to have
Yeah.
those guys.
We're talking right out the window.
And we'll have more. I mean, just around the corner, so to speak, is the Route 2 sidewalks. We will be dealing with issues up there. And parking, I think sidewalks and parking are related. It strikes me that, going down to the green and walking up to the restaurants, if you were in New York City, you'd call that rock star parking. It's only a few hundred yards. So I think in terms of signage and reminding people where parking exists versus I can't park right in front, so it's not worth it. I think having sidewalks will at least potentially help to alleviate some of our parking by making it easier to go from a parked car further away to the intended destination.
Every senior that I've talked to is 100%
Oh, yeah.
up for this, so.
Hey, we have a couple, time is getting on. We have a couple of motions. We've already done the cemetery, but at the bottom of page 10 are a couple of motions. Would anybody like to move those?
Sure, I gotta find them first. I mean, I gotta call them up. Okay, there we go. Okay,
I move to approve the use of $254,509 in ARPA funds for the Complete Streets project on Bridge Street, which includes a sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to US 2, Route 2, an uphill bike lane and improvements to the pedestrian walkway at the intersection of Railroad Street and Bridge Street near the Richmond Market.
Oh, here.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The motion is to use $254,509 in ARPA funds for the Complete Streets project, which would include a sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to US 2, an uphill bike lane, and improvements to the pedestrian walkway at the intersection of Railroad Street and Bridge Street near the Richmond Market. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say one more thing, Jay.
Okay.
So it's part of this project is going to be engineering. Engineering is always an expensive part of any project. This project is less expensive. We're projecting it's less expensive than if we went through the grant process through the Regional Planning Commission, because we do not have to jump through all of those hoops.
Right.
My hope is that engineering will look at particularly this section, which is more complicated than what Pete's doing right now. And we'll think about what are the appropriate projects for town staff to do as opposed to appropriate pieces of this project that might be more suitable for, more difficult projects for more experienced installers. But we don't know that yet, and this at least gets us started.
Okay, please state your name. Oh, Kathleen, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Just to point out that Pete Goslin has stated that they would not be in a position to do the new sidewalks, but they will, of course, do maintenance on existing sidewalks like they just have so capably done on the west side of Bridge Street. So just want to point out, I don't know that the town staff could do the project on the east side as a new construction project.
Okay,
That's a good point.
so please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David? I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. And we have a second motion at the very bottom of page 10.
I'll make that. I move to approve the use of $64,000 in ARPA funds as a match for the Transportation Alternative Program TAP grant to construct the sidewalk on the east side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to Esplanade.
This is David. I'll second.
We have a motion from Lisa Miller and a second from David Sander to approve the use of $64,000 in ARPA fund as a match for the Transportation Alternative Program grant to construct a sidewalk on the west side of Bridge Street from Jelena Court to Esplanade.
I have one question, and Josh, maybe you know. We do have a reserve fund for new sidewalks, as I recall.
We do.
Do you know how much money is in that fund?
I think it was 35,000.
Yeah, I have to look, I can look it up probably.
Well, it's not important for right now,
It is
but
what it is.
that might be our contingency money if this is if for one reason or another it goes over. And we might want, these are projects that we had on our capital plan that were going to take much longer for us to accomplish.
We're talking this contingency for
Yep.
the big one.
Kathleen, did you have another
Yeah,
point?
any of them. Okay.
Your hand's still up. I guess not.
No,
Okay,
my question is, if with the motion, the matching for the TAP grant is for the east side. I thought I heard your motion, but it's the
I
west.
must have misspoken. Thank you for correcting me. The motion is for the east side.
And that's for the grant that we have just received.
Right.
Thank
Okay. Thanks for the correction. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, that motion has been approved. I would like to ask your indulgence for a second. We have an item that is listed as a 5-minute item, which flows directly out of this. It is on page 12. It is item L on your agenda, but it is just a natural follow-up to this. The item is
The TAP grant.
the TAP grant. All we have to do is to approve the grant agreement.
I move to approve the grant agreement for the Transportation Alternatives Program grant.
A second.
A motion from Jeff Ford, a second from Lisa Miller to approve the grant agreement for the Transportation Alternatives Program grant. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Thank you. That's another item knocked down. Okay, item H on your agenda. Item H is back up a little bit, Jay. Item H is consideration of approval for the use of conservation reserve funds to pay for a speaker on public wildlife and the Andrews Community Forest. The Conservation Commission has asked to use $250 from the Conservation Reserve Fund to pay for a talk by Sue Morse. Information about the talk is in your packet. Yes, sir.
You're sure, Gene?
I'm sharing the wrong thing. Or I don't need to be sharing.
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay. Is there any discussion of the $250 to pay for Sue Morse to talk to us about wildlife in the forest?
Just the
I
fee.
think it's a great idea.
She's very knowledgeable. Is there a motion?
So I move to approve the use of $250 from the Conservation Reserve Fund to pay for an educational talk by wildlife specialist Sue Morris.
Okay. Do we have a second?
No, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford, a second from Lisa Miller, to approve the use of $250 from the Conservation Reserve Fund to pay for an educational talk by wildlife specialist Sue Morse. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Okay, the next item on our agenda, and we have 3 items left in our agenda before we get to minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. And it is currently 9:40. If possible, we could do those by 10. Our next item on the agenda is in relation to the Bombardier Meadow parking plan from the Richmond Land Trust. We have Jim Feinson from the Land Trust with us, and there is information about their updated plan for 2023 in your packet. Jim, are you prepared to chat with us about this?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, this should be a quick item because this does not really require any action by the select board. I think this is an update item. For the past 3 years, the Richmond Land Trust has provided temporary seasonal parking at the Bombardier Meadow in Jonesville to help try to alleviate the parking pressure on the river access at that point. However, that has been problematic because it's not keeping with the terms of the easement, is causing degradation of that parcel, and is causing numerous problems for the neighbors of noise and dust, and concerns about safety. We were providing that while the Parking Advisory Committee was coming up with a longer-term plan for parking in that area. I feel like the Parking Advisory Committee has reached a point of conclusion for what they're recommending for parking in the area. So this year, the Richmond Land Trust will be returning to the original terms of the easement, which provided for only up to 5 parking spaces on the Bombardier Meadow. It's our plan to use those as handicap-only spaces to provide river access for those with disabilities, and to provide it also as a drop-off point for people accessing the river but not parking. We had an original design for Bombardier Meadow for parking. We'll need to update that. We will be doing some hardening of that portion of the meadow to protect the ecosystem, and would also look to improve the river access so that it is accessible for all folks who'd like to use it. This does mean a significant loss of parking that we've had there in recent years, but as an all volunteer organization, we do not have the capacity to manage that parking, to manage the trash and the noise and the other issues that are there. And again, we are not the sole easement holder. The easement is also held by the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and both the Richmond Land Trust Board and the Vermont Housing Conservation Board want us to return to the original terms of the easement. So those are our plans for 2023. We will be flexible and look to see what we might, see how that works in this coming year. Will take some time. We need to apply for our permits and to figure out how we'll get the work done. But right now, that's our plan for 2023.
I especially like the large boulders.
Yes. Yeah, we've had a real problem with scofflaws who don't respect the parking that we had established. So we're going to have to harden it a little bit further.
Yep. Well, Jim, I want to thank the Land Trust for thinking about all this and putting together this plan. Lisa Miller, go ahead.
No, same, I echo that. Jim, if you would pass on the Land Trust, you've been really helpful and generous. And I understand, for the sake of the parcel, really, you need to take it out of that use. That's fine. It helped a lot. And it's helped us, I think, get past just a temporary fix. We have better things in the future that we can do that are more compatible, I think, with the area. So thank you very much.
Okay. Bard, Jeff, David, do you have any questions for Jim?
You know, my only question, and I'm just pondering this, is the third to last bullet, work with the town and local towing companies, to provide some form of enforcement. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I may be wrong, but it's my perspective that the police department, even fully staffed, does not or cannot enforce parking on private property that's not town property or in the right of way. So I don't know if you have had more thoughts on that, Jim, or what that would look like.
Yeah, well, we're certainly very sensitive to the issues of police coverage in the town and all the other parking issues that they have to deal with throughout the summer. There are, creative solutions where the parcel could become quasi-public for the handicap parking spaces. But I think a better solution will be to really work with private local towing companies to support us as a private landowner and enforcing the parking that we'd like to have there, which would mean when we say handicap accessible, it would be those who have official designation, and parking would not be permitted for folks who don't have that.
Okay. Mary?
Yeah, Mary Hool. When this designation comes in, and I understand that Spillane is tow happy, that's their job. You really need to make sure that it is posted, because when people come back and their car is missing, they automatically think it has been stolen. So adequate information, and yeah, let's add a few more signs, but letting the people know that you will be towed if you do not comply. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Okay.
And Jay, the one other thing I had is fill at the road level in the area between Duxbury Road intersection and the Jonesville Bridge. So I could sort of picture it in my head, but it's a little stale. I don't know if that's something Pete wants to deal with that within the right of way. It seems like that's part of the broader parking plan, and that really strikes me as it is within the town's area of responsibility and opportunity.
Yeah.
Is anyone here from the parking committee? Anybody?
John is.
Oh, I'm sorry, who?
John Cohn.
John Rankin?
John Cohn.
John Conley.
Oh, John Rankin here too? Sorry, yes, he is. John, go ahead. John
fine.
Rankin, you got your hand up.
Just in regards to widening the shoulder between the Duxbury Road and the Winooski River Bridge, that we did discuss this with Pete Goslin. He said, my recollection is it would take 2 to 3 days for the crew. I believe there'd be some expense of the gravel, and the parking advisory committee has yet to review his option and make a recommendation on whether we think the town should do this. But Pete did say it was possible, and it is a steep embankment, and it would make it easier to park there.
Okay.
Could I add something
Please.
barely related? Okay, our constable, Andy Squires, is the only constable we have. And he has said, and he would say so himself, that if he had another person like himself to enforce parking, it would take a load off the police department, and it would be twice as effective as him running over. He's also the animal control officer, and he has other things to do. So he would want someone to shadow him for a while or work with him until they would be able to operate on their own. Summer's coming fast. And I think Andy's very interested in that. Somebody should talk to Andy and just see what he's got in mind and how realistic it is or possible it is. And maybe we do it.
Can I just give you one more thing, please? The second, down Duxbury Road, the second driveway is the Cross property. Mr. and Mrs. Cross on the property used to be a sawmill. That property was on the market last year. That would be exquisite for parking. I don't know who's going to purchase it. I don't want the town to purchase it, but it's just available. It's not that, you have to build something. It's pretty much a whole parking lot with a warehouse building on it. So if anyone on the parking committee or recreation could contact them, they'll be up soon.
You know, the best part, it has river access.
Mhm.
Bingo.
Right, it's definitely something worth
You don't
exploring.
have to portage anything anywhere. You just, you're in.
Okay,
Thank you.
any further stuff before we move on to our last two items? Jim, again, thank you so much. Please thank your compatriots on the land trust.
Thanks very much.
Okay, moving on down to item J, which is consideration of reimbursement to MMC TV for equipment.
Is that name for you?
Huh?
Item J.
Item J for J. Coincidentally, I am president and treasurer of Mount Mansfield Community Television, so I will not be voting on this. Mount Mansfield Community Television supplied the audio and visual equipment for this room. They did this fairly quickly in 2021 when meetings were turned to in person. At the time, they paid for it all. The plan was to see if we would reimburse MMC TV with ARPA funds. Now, the ARPA committee discussed this at our last meeting, and we all agreed that we love MMC TV to death, but we didn't think this was really met the criteria of ARPA usage. So we kicked it back to the select board. So the select board is being asked to approve $10,046 from the technology equipment expense line in the town administration budget to reimburse MMC TV for equipment here in the room within the amount over the budgeted amount of this expense item coming from unassigned funds.
And I actually got an update. Angeliki provided me updated figures. The actual total is a little less at $9,794. And if that's approved tonight, then we'll come back next week with all the receipts, everything that you bought and the PO and the request for a check.
How much does that budget have in it overall? Josh, do you have that number?
For that line?
Yeah, that's technology equipment.
Don't have that on me, but that was all. We basically all budgeted for, I think this year we had the server in there at $10,000 and then we had a couple other computers. So it was like in the well over $14,000 range. So this is certainly going to exceed that because we've spent everything that was budgeted.
Right. So we're overspending that, but we have money in unassigned.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Would ownership of that equipment be transferred to the town, or would that be owned by MMC TV?
Excellent.
Good question. Yeah.
I believe then we would own it, but I'll double check with Angeliki. I would still want them to maintain it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I don't know anything about it and they do, but
Very good.
it's a good question.
So, you know,
This is Barb. I think that is a relevant question. I would, at least based on first blush, I wouldn't support using that town equipment line item to purchase equipment for a separate entity. I think it's justified and merited. I just don't think that's the right line item based on how we built the budget.
Well, we have the option of changing the motion to say from unassigned funds.
Sure. You're going to follow up with her on ownership and maintenance and
That's
running it.
Okay. So do we want to move it now or move it at the next meeting after we've gotten that answered?
Let's do it because they'll
Okay.
get shopping on us.
Well, I would need a motion then.
This is David. I move to approve the expenditure of
$9,794.
Yep.
from unassigned funds to
Reimburse.
reimburse MMC TV for equipment in the town's hybrid meeting room.
You can stop there.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. David, Jeff, go ahead.
Anybody?
Too many J's in this room.
Yeah.
My assumption is that, if and when we do renovate this building, we'll be doing a lot of mechanicals, including wiring. We'll have hopefully more plugs that are going to plug things in. But that would be a good time. Having the equipment is useful. Where it goes and how it's configured can change. But I agree that it should be town-owned equipment. Something that we didn't discuss during the presentation is the distinction between MMC TV and Radiate as far as a tenant in the building. MMC TV pays us something on the order of $12,000 or $13,000 a year. I think it's something in that order, isn't it?
Okay.
A year in rent, and Radiate pays us $400 a year in rent. And the town center committee felt that the MMC TV was while both of them are high value tenants, the priority should be to MMC TV if we run out of space for tenant space. So the reason I bring it up under this is I see if we go forward with the the town center renovation, and even if we don't, they're here. That they're a high value tenant that we'll try to keep them as long as we can.
Okay,
Just a question along those lines, Jeff. Does the overall plan for the building include like a real upgrade or increase of not coax anymore? It's, fiber optic cable or whatever. Are there raceways for the cable?
Well, again, we haven't gotten that far. We're in conceptual design right now. But my assumption is that we're talking about new windows, which are a very expensive line item. New mechanicals, all new mechanicals,
Yep.
Maybe reuse the boiler.
But
and
anyway,
all of
about
this.
the wiring.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion Bard, you have your hand up?
Yeah, it just, so I have a concern about like the town buying a bunch of stuff and we don't know what it is, and then it has to be somebody's job to manage it and own it and fix it and inventory it. And so it being like $10,000, that's my concern about that. My other comment about renovation. I remember being in a conference room at the Vermont Center for Independent Living probably 20 years ago. And their conference room was fully set up for microphones, for speech, like where, so if you try to make your meeting rooms accessible to everybody and you do it at the time that you're renovating, it's the time to do it. It was a failure to a significant degree when the state of Vermont built the Waterbury State Office Complex, because get this, they couldn't agree on whose problem it was. Was it the Agency of Digital Services or was it Building and General Services? So I think that speaks to the question of whoever's going to manage and own this equipment needs to know something about the equipment. And I think when we move forward, we need to contemplate what infrastructure do we need to make our spaces accessible, things like, cameras, et cetera. And if we have stranded costs of $10,000 4 years from now, that is what it is.
Okay, so do we have any other comment before we vote? Okay, the motion is to reimburse NMCTV approximately $9,700 for equipment in the town's hybrid meeting room coming from unassigned funds. Who made the motion originally? David, and seconded by Lisa. Okay, made motion by David Sanders, seconded by Lisa. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye.
Jay, you were going to abstain.
I abstain. Thank you. I'm just saying aye to everything. Okay, we are almost a half hour ahead of schedule, which I don't think anybody would have taken cash to bet on. But we have one last item on the agenda before we get to warrants, purchase orders, and executive sessions. It is on page 12. It is consideration of accepting an amended amount for the Vermont Historic Preservation Grant. We were originally awarded $14,801. The amount has now been increased to $20,000. This was added to the select board meeting on May 1 as a late addition, and the general consensus from the select board was to accept the grant at $20,000. In addition, to get the contractor secured, Josh signed the agreement so we could sign the contract with the guarantor, with a contractor. This is a request for a formal motion from the select board to accept the grant at $20,000.
Chairman, I move to approve, no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I move to approve acceptance of the State Historic Preservation Grant totaling $20,000 to use for repairs to the steeples at the library, and to approve use of the town center reserve for the matching funds, and to name town manager Josh Arneson as the authorized representative.
This is David, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the State Historic Preservation Grant totaling $20,000 for repairs to the steeples, and to approve use of the town center reserve for the matching funds, and to name Josh Arneson our rep. Moved by Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sanders. Any comment? Please state your name and your vote.
Aye, Lisa, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. It is 9:58 PM. We have finished the agenda, but we have warrants and purchase orders. I would like to entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the meeting of May 1st, 2023.
I have a correction in the minutes.
Okay.
Here, give me just a second. Yeah, on page 17 of the May 1st bundle, I think it is. May 2nd, whatever it was. On page 12 of that 17-page minutes, about halfway down the page, it says Wilson Community Center. I think it's supposed to be Williston. In fact, I'm sure it's supposed to be.
I'm sure you're right.
It says Wilson.
Uh-huh.
It just was a name that could mislead someone.
So he's made a note of that. Any other emendations to the May 1st minutes? Okay, can we have a motion?
Sure, I moved that those minutes be accepted.
Minutes of May
Correct.
1st accepted. Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
A motion from Lisa Miller, second from David Sanders to approve the minutes of May 1st, 2023. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bart abstain.
And J.I. Okay, we also have the minutes of the meeting on the 9th, May 9th, which was that was a special meeting, right? Yep. Does anybody have any additions, changes, corrections, or deletions to the minutes of May 9th? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Somebody else can do this one.
Okay, I,
Move to approve the minutes of the May 9th meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
okay. I'll
Okay, we have a
second.
motion from David Sander and a second from Lisa Miller to approve the minutes of the May 9th meeting. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
And J.I. Okay, we now have warrants and purchase orders. Have you had a chance to review the warrants? Are there any questions?
David, move to approve the warrants.
I'll second.
We have a motion from David Sanders, second from Lisa Miller to approve the warrants as presented. Please state any questions? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
And J.I. Now, we have a few purchase orders, right?
Yes, getting that.
Okay, so Josh is bringing up the purchase orders.
There we go.
Okay, so you have purchase order 4434 to Cody Chevrolet for a new crew cab pickup, municipal discount and trade-in. So the net amount to be approved for purchase order 4434 is $35,305.
I'd move to approve.
Okay.
And so I think you need to move the
Oh,
number
oh,
up
the
in the
numbers,
right hand,
okay.
4434.
Yep.
Down to the very bottom, 35305.
Purchase order 4434 to Cody Chevrolet for a net of $35,305.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa Miller and a second for David, from Jeff Forward to approve purchase order 4434 in the amount of $35,305 to Cody Chevrolet.
I would have a question on this. Why did we sell it to 2017? Was it, is it? I think it was just time,
Yeah, this is the truck that Pete uses. It's the former's truck.
Mhm.
So it's on a, what is that, like a 5-year replacement cycle. It's in the
Okay.
budget and in the capital plan.
That's in the capital plan, okay.
6 years.
And just observe, if I remember correctly, one of the things we've been trying to do with these vehicles is hit the sweet spot before it turns into a lot of maintenance and problems. And while it's still worth some money, so it's sort of this cycle to avoid having old vehicles that end up costing a lot and being kind of financial sinks.
Great.
Fantastic trade-in.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good answer.
It's gotta have had a rough
Thank
life.
you.
Any further comments before we vote? Okay, please state your name and your vote. This
Yes.
actually, let me say, restate the motion. This is a motion to approve purchase order 4434 and the amount of $35,305 to Cody Chevrolet for a new 2024 crew cab pickup. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. And we have 5 more purchase orders, so sit tight. Next purchase order is purchase order 4435 to SD Ireland Brothers. This is for retreatment. The rest of it's coming down. Yay. Okay, there we go. Whole lot of asphalt and riprap for the shoulder. And the breakdown by where we got it from is down below. The total amount, most of this is for the asphalt, is $324,939.30. Questions?
3,500 tons of asphalt.
We're having a party.
Yeah.
And everything down below is the other bids, just for clarity's sake.
Okay.
And then, yeah, Pete basically builds it up to the full amount of the budget. and behaves as much as he possibly can. And this will start after July 1st. So the
Oh,
work that
okay,
he's,
so
the
that
work that he's
hasn't all
doing
been-
right now on Cochrane Road and over in Volunteers Green is still FY 23 money that we weren't able to get to last fall. I think we had some weather delays.
Looks good, by the way.
Okay, that looks great.
I move to approve purchase order 4435 to SD Ireland in an amount not to exceed $324,939 and the all important 30 cents.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sander. Do we have a
I
second?
will
Okay. We have a second from Jeff Ford. So we have a motion for approving purchase order 4435 for $324,939 on the all important 30 cents for asphalt in the next fiscal year. That it was seconded by Lisa and Jeff. So Jeff, I guess. Any other comments or questions? Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Jeff, I. David, I. And I just want to
Bart.
say it really reimbursable no is circled.
And J.I. Okay, we have 4 more purchase orders. The next purchase order is purchase order 4514. This is paying our county taxes. County taxes go to pretty much for paying for the court. I actually attended the county budget meeting. It was all very reasonable. This amount would be for a total of $25,697.
$697.
And that was purchase order 4514. Any questions?
Okay, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 4514 to Chittenden County for $25,697.
Yay.
Go ahead.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from
Stop
David
waiting.
Sander to approve purchase order 4514. Seconded by Jeff Forward. This is for an amount of $25,697 to pay our county taxes. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. 3 more to go.
Fine.
Count them down. Okay, the next purchase order is purchase order 4605. This is for a whole ton of money. This is for Mount Mansfield Unified School District. It's our Q4 education taxes. It is for $1,598,735.66.
Yeah.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 4605 to the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District in an amount not to exceed $1,598,733.66.
Okay, we have a motion from David.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, second from Lisa Miller to approve purchase order 4605 to the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District in the amount of $1,598,733.66. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Next one down is purchase order 4618 to Hunger Valley Construction. This is for $62,905 for restoration of the library exterior with a 15% contingency built into it. Questions?
The whole exterior?
No, it's for the towers. It's that
Oh, okay, it's all that.
$20,000 grant is going towards this.
Okay.
We approve.
Okay, any other questions?
So this was 54,700. Now it's 62,905.
Other than the contingency.
Oh,
Back to the motion that the board made, and we voted to make, just in case we have an overage, I'd rather
Right,
have that buffer than keep coming back.
as a not to exceed basis.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Okay, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 4618 to Hunger Valley Construction and an amount not to exceed $62,905, including the 15% contingency.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Jeff Ford to approve purchase order 4618 to Hunger Valley Construction for restoration of the library exterior plus contingency in an amount not to exceed $62,905. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Jeff, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And J.I. Last purchase order. Purchase order 4616 to R.H.R. Smith and Company. This is for a fiscal year 23 audit for an amount of $14,500.
They're in Maine?
Yep, they're in Maine.
I've forgotten that. This is David, move
Remotely?
to approve purchase order 4616 to RHR Smith and Company in an amount not to exceed $14,500.
Okay, we have a motion from David.
A second.
We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve purchase order 4616 in the amount of $14,500 to go to pay for the 2023 audit. Lisa?
Where in Maine was that?
Buxton,
Old Orchard Beach, I think it's in.
Buxton?
Buxton.
Okay. Huh.
Oh,
Old
wait.
Orchard Road.
So it's
Old
probably
Orchard.
near.
Yeah,
Old Orchard.
Buxton.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Old Orchard.
You ready for the vote?
Okay.
Yeah.
Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Yeah, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
J.I. Okay, we now move to items for our next agenda.
You want to do this now, or do we want to do it after we come out of executive session?
We can always add more items in the end. Is there anything that's just burning that you want to put on the agenda right now?
Yes.
Okay, seeing none.
Well, no.
Oh, you do have some? Okay, please go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I'd like an update on where we are with the personnel issue.
Okay,
I also, we had the Andrews Community Forest appointments.
right. And we also had the question of who would be our, what was the term, town forester?
Tree warden.
Tree warden. And somebody proposed like battle cage match, kind of
One of those lumberjack competitions you see on TV with the big
Yeah.
claws.
throwing hatchets
Could
and
actually
things.
use a battle axe.
That's getting to be a big thing.
It is, yeah.
Um,
There are bars where you go and they give you beer and hatchets to throw. What's not to like? Jeff?
Very cash register.
You know, we talk a little bit about the constable, and we've talked about this before as far as, you know, parking enforcement.
Andy himself said it would be a good idea, so.
Yeah.
State statute identifies what they can and can't do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's-
So,
And
you
Andy
know,
is
I don't know
trained.
whether that's worth discussing or not.
Roll research it, find out what the options are.
We
Okay.
also, what was I gonna say? At Beta Technologies, they do this thing called a stand up, where every person in the company stands up one at a time for 1 minute and says what they're doing, what they did, work, you know, cram it into 1 minute, and they sit down. And apparently it's a really big, first of all, it's a unifier. It brings people together. It helps them get over the stage fright, helps them mix and everything. And I would like to see our 14 or whatever commissions we've got somehow recognized, if they deserve it, for the efforts they're putting in.
Mhm.
And maybe, we tried this once and Josh got Kevin McAleer on the agenda, and then he was sick and he couldn't show for the parking advisory committee.
Mhm.
But I would like us to put 2 minutes or 3 or whatever you think is right, not much,
Mhm.
in the agenda early on for those people, for someone selected by their individual committees to come and just give us a nutshell of it. You know, what are they doing? What do they need? Especially what do they need from us? What do they expect? What's going wrong? Where do they need help?
Yep.
And, you know, leave it at
Yeah.
that.
I asked for that when June was chair.
Now, some of our committees we hear from pretty frequently anyway, but the ones we don't, I agree, it'd be good to hear from.
Yeah,
them.
well, it's also a nice recruiting tool. When people know that, you know, there's a loop and it's getting closed.
Yep.
I think it's-
Recognition.
Yeah, and recognition too. I think it encourages participation.
1 or 2 a meeting or something. you know.
Okay,
Yeah, right. Not a whole session, but
okay.
There's a workshop that VLCT is putting on next month for HR consulting. Apparently they do HR consulting, human resource consulting, and there's a workshop that they're gonna tell us what they can do. We might want to think about that, you know, that might be, you know, we don't have an HR staff and they might be helpful and, you know.
Just so you, I reach out to them on issues as often as I need to.
Yeah.
And Jill Neer and their staff over there is wonderful.
Okay, so as an FYI, we are 32 minutes ahead of schedule. The only item left is to consider going into executive session about there are 2 motions to be made.
Yep.
Right now, I'd just like to call attention, the agenda adjournment time is 1 hour from now. So it is up to us to see how fast we can get in and out of an executive session.
Jay,
So,
this is David. I moved to.
Oh,
Before you go in.
Uh-huh.
I'll exit so you don't have to leave the meeting room, but if I can just ask a couple things or offer. When I was in the stewardship of the urban landscape class, along with a gentleman who's an active forester, we did the town inventory of trees. It is the Bridge Street, Main Street. So the town inventory of trees has been done, not the outer village, but the village itself. And then, when the architect's rendering of the trees, who's gonna be raking them leaves? Yeah, please think about that.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
not planning on doing that. And then, last, and then I'll get out of Dodge. The survey of the town center, somebody did the pins and surveyed and stuff like that, and I saw them. That's not accurate. And you know why I know it's not accurate? That maple tree that I planted out there, I planted to replace the one that came down from the town center.
Okay, so for the next agenda, detailed report from Mary Hool on trees. Do we have a motion?
Thank you.
For the executive session?
Thank you, Mary. Jay, this is
Thanks.
David. I moved to find premature public knowledge about negotiations with the New England PBA would cause the town or a person to suffer a substantial disadvantage.
Okay.
I second that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, second from Jeff Ford, to move to find that premature public knowledge about negotiations with the New England Police Benevolent Association would cause a town or person to suffer a substantial disadvantage. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
Jay, aye. Okay,
Want me to do it? You're doing it?
sure.
Yeah, I move we enter into an executive session to discuss negotiations with New England PBA under the provisions of one VSA 313A1B and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Lisa Miller, seconded by David Sander, to move into executive session to discuss negotiations with the New England PBA under the provisions of one VSA 313A1B and to invite town manager Josh Arneson into the executive session. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, I. David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, for those of you on the call, we will be staying in the room because everybody's left, but we will be inviting Bard into a breakout room. You are welcome to stay connected to the main meeting. We will be back to formally adjourn after the executive session, but I can't tell you how long it will be, or you're welcome to drop off, but this would be our final agenda item otherwise.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, Aaron.
I'm just making me.
Just delete the room.
Yeah,
There you
that's what I do, right?
You may need to cancel and do it over again. Just X.
Yeah, I've been trying that and it keeps coming up with the same thing.
Okay, delete the room. Yep. Wait, no.
Nope,
Yep.
yeah.
You got it now?
I just
Okay.
Clicked.
So add a room. Okay, assign.
We're recording. We're all back in the session. I think we're all set to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should be good.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the police department wages as presented, which match the Williston Police Department contingent on the mutual consent of the town and the union regarding temporary support from Heinsberg Police Department.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Is Bard, I will second that.
We have a motion and second. Do we have further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Could you restate the motion? I'm sorry.
Okay, the motion again. I move to approve, as moved by David Sander and seconded by Bart Hale. I move to approve the police department wages as presented, comma, which match the Williston Police Department, comma, contingent on the mutual consent of the town and the union regarding temporary support from the Heinsberg Police Department. Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Jeff, nay.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay. And an agenda item for next
Hold on
meeting.
a second, sorry. The only day it was just the only day.
An agenda item for the next meeting, not tonight, is to discuss the scheduling of a public select board meeting on the single topic of the future of Richmond policing. Okay, I think we're all in agreed that that's necessary. Scheduling, yes, because I think the town needs to, we're at a crossroads. We are at square one. And we can go in any direction we like, but we should have some idea what that direction should be.
Right, this is a singular chance,
Right.
opportunity.
Yeah, it is a fork in the road,
Yeah,
both
it's not-
opportunity and challenge.
We should take that for.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
This is David, it's so moved. Oh, second.
All, please state your name and your vote.
Yes,
Jay. Yes, Jeff,
Aye.
Aye.
Bart, aye.
Jay, aye, we're adjourned. Look at your watches.
Thanks, y'all. Well done.